Oh, hi, everyone. Hi, happy Friday. Chat, listen. Smikes and I were talking today, and we both felt like this Friday felt like Sunday night, and it was almost ready for it to be the Monday again. Not in a good way. I hope none of y'all else had that kind of feeling, and I hope everyone is going to have a relaxing weekend and not get the Sunday scaries on a Friday afternoon like Smikes and I did. It's not a good feeling, Chad. It's not a good feeling. I'm ready for the next weekend, even though we didn't have this weekend. Oh my goodness. But everyone, welcome on and happy Friday. It is Science News of the Week. We've got some really cool, crazy biology to talk about tonight. And I had started a little attempt at introducing new species weekly, because there's always new papers on brand new species. And I thought it kind of shows off the beauty of the natural world and how little we know about it. And then we didn't do it for a while, and now we're bringing it back again tonight. Hi, Alex Dixon, thank you for the boop. So we're bringing it back tonight, and I'm going to try to keep doing it weekly as well. Just the identification of these new species. And there's not a lot of depth to these articles. I just think it's kind of neat to identify that there are these new... Let's get to it. The first science news story of the evening, and then we'll also do predictions for how many things we're going to get through tonight. With 3,270 channel points on the line, the correct answer is, in fact, a gecko. A new species of gecko has been discovered as of this week. There it is. Any guesses on where it was located? It's a fascinating. It's kind of predictable, I think. Tarzan and Kith, congratulations on your winnings. Who put all that? Who put on the mouse? Who's the mouse one? There actually was a mouse one recently, and actually, guys, let's go ahead and start with the prediction. The next prediction of just how many articles we'll get through tonight. Gamble those channel points on that because it's always a fun one to do. We'll do a 30-minute prediction. Y'all can get those channel points in. Okay, there we go. On the ceiling, I like the Amazon Insurance Company office. Tolkien Town, I like that. It is on that tree. It is actually in Australia. The reason I found out was surprising is because it's, I don't know, Australian animals, I tend to imagine that there's some kind of deadly feature of them. And actually, chat, there is an interesting defense mechanism that this animal has that is well, not just in this animal, but closely related geckos, it is also conserved. So let's quickly do a run through of the paper. It's quite simple and straightforward. It is called the new, neither Smikes, neither. It's a different kind of defense to ward off potential predators. So it's a spiny-tailed gecko, and here's the genus species from the mulga woodlands of inland Australia. And one cool part about it is, again, when we looked at the picture, it does have a pretty unique sense of camouflage. So even if you compare on this figure the tail to the rest of the wood structure, it's a pretty good series of camouflage. Even this, it's like blended quite well into the tree. There was an interview with the scientists, and one of them did make the joke. The reason it took us so long is because they were so well camouflaged. To that, I tip my hat to the authors and be like, you know what? Y'all have a good sense of humor. This is actually excellent of y'all to be able to do. So, what they did fund... I know, but Andrew, just in my heart of hearts, I'm like, I would have made that joke. I'm like, so you know what? You're okay in my book, Ross. You're okay in my book. These are very, very fundamental papers. Again, I just thought it was cool to demonstrate of how often new animals are discovered. And that was the reason why we started doing that section. And I'm sorry that I didn't do it for probably a few months now. But I wanted to bring it back just out of interest. It is in a very... It's called the Records of the Western Australian Museum, Mike. So it is extremely niche. The reason it's in part there is because some of the samples are in the Western Australian Museum where they were studied. So like when you have a particular kind of sample that you're basing a lot of your information off of. It's your average. It's called the holotype. And the holotype is located in this particular museum. So that was one feature of them publishing there. Usually it's Mike's. I don't want to say it's a constant rule of thumb, but most of these publications on new species are not located in an S-tier journal because they're going to do the exact same thing that is done in this paper, but with a different animal. Nothing revolutionary, no behavior. All they're doing is fundamental phylogenetic tree, genetic relatedness, and morphology, what it looks like. Hello, Travel the World! How you doing, Travel the World? Travel. We are bringing back an old segment, New Species of the Week, and Travel, again, the reason I wanted to bring it back is because it highlights a little bit how many new species we find all the time. And so this one is a gecko that was discovered in inland Australia, and it actually is very, very camouflage dependent. It's just, it looks cool, it's interesting. In the interview they did mention that the reason they didn't find it is because it was blending in well. That's a good joke. It seems like it has 2 different color varieties it comes with, and I just wanted to go through again how this paper works. It's very, very basic. It's just how the genetic sequence is when compared to other animals, and then the structure. And what Smikes, another reason why it's so niche. Nope. That's where, yep. So Smikes is already asking the hard-hitting question. Smikes is like, well, did they at least genome sequence the entire animal? Do we have a banked genome sequence of the animal? So Smikes, let's go down to the methodologies for this. Let's see, materials and methods. Morphological comparisons. Here's the genetic study. So, they did 2 genomes right here. They did mitochondrial, which I thought a lot of places don't do. It was neat that they did the mitochondrial sequencing, and then they did nuclear sequencing, which is just the fundamental, what is the DNA code. A lot of places, if they have the funds for it, will take multiple sections of the body and from multiple individuals, because that's an important thing, right? So you want to make sure, like, what is your average, what is your normal, what is the thing that you should be comparing against. They only did 1 sample, Smikes. They only took from one area of the body in that 1 sample. They highlighted the liver, and it's because it's fairly nucleus dense, so they had a bunch of DNA to work with. But they did that standard sequencing, and they compared it to 19 different closely related species, and they got a pretty good phylogenetic tree. So here's the whole, like, large tree that they have, and of these ones in the darker text were samples that they were comparing against it. Did they only find 1? How do they know it's not a mutant? So they only sequenced 1, but they found multiple. They did find multiple. One of the species is now preserved in the museum that this paper is published from. And that's called, like, that's a preserved specimen that's called, like, the holotype, which is what all the primary measurements were based off of and what the inference of this is a new species. They usually put these away in museums as a way of categorizing different species. And what's neat about it is, if it's well done, what you can do is you can go back to these preserved specimens and essentially recheck many, many years later. And they've actually done species reclassifications based off this metric. So it's fairly standard, in part because it's just the funding, so the people don't have a lot of money to do more work on it. Funny enough, I just caught a possible... Ooh, Tarzan, what kind of ant did you catch? Tarzan, I forget where you are located, but right now, when I went on a walk today, I saw a lot of the picnic table ants coming out. Like they were having their mating flight, because I was walking with baby Lona today, and they were just all over, and I was like, "Wah!" I didn't catch any because baby Lona actually needed to rush back home, because Lito was going off and she needed little one, so we hightailed it out of there. But that was one possibility. Hello, Optic Nerve. How are you doing today, Optic? Were there any deliveries today.
Okay, see you tomorrow.
Welcome in, Optic. We're just talking about this new species that was discovered. They did fundamental sequencing, and they put it in a phylogenetic tree to compare what their most.
Philippi 3000.
Fix the audio. I boosted the audio at the beginning, Smikes. I did do that. I did a couple of things even. Who knew? Massachusetts thing is oh, nice. It's Pennsylvanicus. Yep, nice. So it's a carpenter ant. Very cool. Tarzan, did she already shed her wings when you caught her? The reason I ask is because that's kind of your telltale sign of if she's been mated or not. Sometimes rare. It's more rare if you catch her unmated and she still has wings that she'll actually survive. But you can still put her. Want to put her Tarzan in like a long vial with a 20% sugar solution in there, and plugged with a cotton ball, and she will actually drink from the cotton ball, and the cotton ball will go down as the water is sucked up. So she can stay there for a fair bit of time, which I think is kind of neat. Yeah. Just let me know, Tarzan, if you need any pointers on how to keep them going. I do love me some ants. We haven't had any good carpenters in the area, but like I said, with the picnic table ants coming in, and that was kind of neat to be able to see. Okay, so the other thing that they did in this paper, they're very straightforward. They actually did some physical illustrations. Post to pick up on the street, had ants in the past, never got past the founding stage, to be honest. Yeah, so Tarzan, really quickly, I can give you a pointer. Where is my software? It's fine. It's fine. We'll pull out the software here. I actually completed an emote order today. That was a lot of fun. We did a special emote for Nerduino. This is what we did for the lovely Nerduino. Hold on, y'all. Show you in just one moment. We made a Mod Love astronaut for Nerduino. We did that. It was a lot of fun getting this one done today. So what you want to do, really brief a rabbit hole, y'all, into how to take care of ants. So Tarzan, when you get your ant, and I mean the insect, not your relative, you want to get a vial. Usually a glass vial would do because they're more resilient. You have two options. One, you put in a cotton ball about midway point, and then inside of it you fill it with 20% sugar water, and then you put the ant inside, and you plug up this hole with another cotton ball. And what you'll end up happening is this queen, she will drink from the cotton plug, and as the water decreases, the plug will continue to go downward. So you won't have to do anything extra for her for months. All you'll be wanting to watch Tarzan is if she starts laying eggs, and then if the eggs start hatching. But it's very, very easy to keep her at this current stage. The other thing that you can do that makes it easier for when you do need to change stuff out is you get 2 test tubes, and this is actually my preferred method because it makes everything much easier. And what you're gonna do is you actually tape them together. So, after you put in your ant. So in one side of it, you put in your cotton ball, and the other side, you put in your sugar water, and the other side you just leave empty. That's where you can put in your queen. You can put her in on this side, and then you tape the 2 tubes together, and then she can walk back and forth. Now, what's important and good to do, Tarzan, is you can buy this thing off Amazon called acetate. It's essentially red film, a really thin red film. And what you want to do is you want to put this red film over one side of the vial. Ants don't see the color red, so they'll think that they're in the dark. So she will go out to forage, have some beverage item, and then go back into this little pseudo colony that you've built for her. And all it is you've put a red film over a test tube. And then when it's, what's cool, Tarzan, is when it's time to change out the sugar water, all you do is you tap down the vial, split it, and then reattach a new one. And it's very, very easy. This situation here, you have to make sure to empty out the vial, empty out the eggs into a new container, and it could be very messy. So that's why I suggest going with the double. That's what I would do, Tarzan. Absolutely no pressure to do so, of course, but that is my take on it. All right, so back to the species that we were chatting about. They did compare similar to the tail structures, and they actually had a really neat, this is a hand-drawn figure. They also did the standard measurements of the new species. This is the NOV, that means novel, with two closely related species. The two closely related species were based off the phylogenetic analysis, so genetic similarities. These two popped out the highest, and they went ahead and did some comparisons and measurements to show that, yes, there are some differences. Here is that figure that we saw, the high-res imaging in the wild. They did some sampling as well. So they went in southern Australia and actually looked at some of these sites, and just, if it's not measuring density of the animal, but it's measuring whether or not the animal is identified, and which is kind of cool. It's in green here in panel A, where the new ones are. The new ones are for that. It's a new one. I haven't heard it for it. Absolutely, yep. It's posted at Pick and Stream Clips. Oh, so Tarzan, maybe in pets or in nature? Because for stream clips, we usually put just clips of the stream. Maybe put it into the nature or the pets category, or either one of those would be a good one. Awesome, thank you, Smikes. But yeah, so they did a little bit of sampling to identify where things were located, and then this is that holotype sample. So this is the one that's now stored in the museum, Smikes, and this is where a lot of the existing measurements, and this is where also the genetic sequencing came from, was this particular animal. And then there are a couple of night pictures as well, and these are for images from different locations, which are kind of neat. So while they didn't do all the measurements from different locations, they didn't do all the sequencing from different locations, they did do imaging as well, at least from these different sites, and you see that like the back structure and the body plan looks pretty consistent between them, if not there's slight color variations. And the color variations seem to be dependent on where they are. So that's the first species that they discovered, and I thought one thing that's cool about them is how they have a defense mechanism. Is it corpuscular? I don't know the word corpuscular, Spikes. Let's see if they use the word in here in the paper. They do not use the word in the paper. They don't use the word in the paper, so I'm not sure. But this is a close relative of the spiny-tailed gecko, also in Australia, that uses a unique defense mechanism against the snake. Oh, I see. See, a corpuscle, Smikes, in my knowledge, is a cyst. And so that's why I was like, I didn't realize if there were cysts on this animal. Yes, so it does seem like they're most active at sunrise and at dusk. Although there is some night activity for one of those in this last image here. No, this next to last one, sorry. This one here was found to be active at night. The other ones were more early and evening. Corpuscular. Yes, I still hear like a corpuscle, which is a cyst, which I know is not the case.
Spiny-tailed geckos can see perfectly well in the...
Also, very cutie patootie. This one is is a relative that is again exploring at night.
Geckos can see perfectly well in the dark. Nocturnal geckos are unusual. They're one of the few creatures that can see color at night.
they didn't test this on the new species that was identified, but given the similarities both on the genetic and the morphology front, they assume it's similar. I am not sure, Smikes. I do not know the term uvea.
She can do this because she has special cells in her eyes. Cones that respond to different wavelengths of light and are more than 350 times more sensitive than human color vision.
Hi, Quoth the Raven. Quoth, this is a brand new species. I don't know if they've asked if they sell insurance or not. They do have a really neat pattern, Smikes. I've seen it in a couple of the related species, but I'm not sure if that's a function of their vision or if it's just like in terms of like their color vision, or like what the physiological relevance is as to why they look like that.
This sensitive color vision is just right for...
But maybe, I mean, their pupils are very uniquely structured. It seems like it almost has jagged edges that's forming the component of the pupil. I'm not sure. I'll have to see if there's any information on it. My guess, the last person that I know that was doing significant amount of research on geckos was doing it for their gait or their movement behavior and not their vision. So that big lab was at Penn State. So I'll have to see if there's anyone doing vision now.
Hunting in the dark. But there are others who can also see at night. This 25-inch long creature might look like a snake, but it's actually a Burton's legless lizard. It's a predator. Its eyesight is good, but when hunting, it only reacts to movement.
Nope, it was not going to get eaten. It's not going to get eaten, Smikes. Neither is the snake is not going to be killed either. There's actually this is the unique defense mechanism. This is the unique defense mechanism of this animal. Don't worry, no one will be hurt.
As long as the gecko keeps perfectly still, she won't be noticed. The gecko...
Hi, Michael Orhasser!
Say what?
And hello, Winsing! Welcome on in, y'all. Hopefully you're having a great evening. We're on our first science news story of the day, and it's about this new species of gecko they just discovered. Bezos money raining down. Pragmatic, no. I don't know what you're talking about, but hi, Pragmatic. Welcome in.
Together, we can rule the galaxy.
Thank you, Pragmatic Entropy, for the resub with Prime. There it is. Thank you, Pragmatic. I was like, Pragmatic, I don't... No, Jeffrey has not called me. And Pragmatic, we do have a Twitch baby now. We have, for 9 months, called the Twitch baby. If you want something you want to name the Twitch baby, you let me know. Welcome the heck in, Pragmatic. We're just starting the science news with this brand new species of gecko. And this isn't the one that was discovered. It's a close relative. And it's got a unique defense mechanism against snakes. Again, Pragmatic, thank you for that continued support with the Prime resub. Welcome on in.
Returns to the hunt. This giant centipede would be an ideal meal. But there's a problem. She's been seen by another predator. This time, it is a snake, a highly venomous one, the ringed brown snake.
This animal is also, again, located in Australia. This one's known for very good color vision. It's suspected and hypothesized that the new species has similar levels of color vision, but they didn't do any testing on the new species. All they did was morphological changes, so like what are structural differences and similarities between species, and some fundamental, we sequence the genome and the mitochondria.
This snake doesn't rely as much on vision as scent, tasted by its flickering tongue. Keeping stock still won't save the gecko now. But her night vision is so sensitive that she can tell the difference between the snake and the legless lizard, even in the dark. So she employs another defense. She secretes a foul-smelling liquid from glands in her tail. The pungent odor completely overwhelms the snake's sense of smell. A powerful deterrent. Once the threat is gone, she settles for a quick beetle snack before retreating to the safety of her tree.
So yes, she does toot, and that makes the snake go away. Which I was like, that is a very unique adaptation to these animals. Cows bells. Cows, how are you doing, Madame? Welcome on in chat. I won today a sticker collection from Cows Bells. Thank you, Smikes. Guys, please go follow Cows Bells, a legendary streamer extraordinaire, creator of the one, the only fish hat. Also, nearly got arrested for crocheting in a park. She didn't do anything naughty. She was just sitting there crocheting. She also, yesterday, we tried out, you can put her in a hot tub digitally. And so we tried streaming her in the hot tub category, even though she was just in a digital hot tub. It's hilarious. She's an amazing maker and crafter. Streams in the mornings. Go hang out with her. It's always a good time. We love you, Cows Bells. We love you, Cows Bells! Welcome on in, Madame. So Smikes asked if their night vision due to increased number of cones in their eyes. So it looks like there's different components of the cones. So there's not the same core component of cones and rods that we have. And so they're different. Same thing way in insects, they're fundamentally different in terms of which ones they're actually there. So there's little differences in the proteins. And so it's not just the composition is different, but it's also that on a molecular level, they're pretty different as well. But their cone equivalent, there's more of in their eye cells. And that's what allows them to see presumably more in the dark. Now, I did try to look up some genetic tricks that they've done with these, and they weren't satisfactory. Much more, they're just there. Share the links. Absolutely, Cryptic Caramel. We always share the links on everything. They're all put on the Discord in the mention on stream category. This keeps me from having to keep spamming the link into the chat across the papers that we're chatting about. I'm happy we put this one in. But just so you know, that's why we don't constantly put it into the chat, only because of those components. And some of these are also, if the papers are paywalled, then we put the papers into the Discord as well. And that way we make sure that, it's an easy access for people in the community, but it's all in the Discord on the mention on stream category. And welcome the heck in, Cryptic. I hope you're doing well today. Hope you're doing well. Alrighty, y'all. So that is just the fundamental beginnings of this. Share link? Yes. Oh, can you share a link? Yes, throw it into the Discord as well. Sorry, Cryptic. I thought you meant in general. There's a science chat that you can go ahead and throw the link into. Or we usually don't put it on the mention on stream because it's usually stuff that I put. But yeah, like the science chat, feel free to throw it in there. So again, y'all, this is just the first paper of it. Just the beginnings of the identification of this species. I don't know how much they're going to do more on this. My guess is that this is just a standard, we identified this new species and we've moved on. There's a lot of reasons to study geckos. They're primarily studied in the terms of regeneration. But it's cool, again, to see that these new animals exist. Hello, Lady Lara Croft. Welcome in. Lady Lara Croft, we're bringing back an older component of SciAnts News, which was New Species of the Week. And this new species of the week is a new gecko that was discovered. And again, we just went over the fundamentals of what they did. They did some molecular testing. They did some morphology or structural differences. And then that was the paper. And so then we looked at a quick video of a close relative and how they and what they do to prevent predation. And they do like very very different things there. So it's a little bit of a different of a defense strategy, but it's pretty cool to be able to see these unique differences. So that's paper number 1. I hope you all liked paper number 1. They are stinky. They do toot. Paper number 2. Here is the title. Here we go. Okay, so I thought this was a really, really cool paper. It is not yet published. It is not yet in a journal. So this is... We don't usually do non-peer-reviewed papers on SciAnts News, but I thought this might be a cool one to start with because there's a... very fascinating component to this. These are, we're talking about lightning bugs, fruit flies, or not fruit flies, fireflies, lightning bugs, fireflies, and a unique species of fireflies, and how on earth they're able to survive. So let's watch a video on these fireflies. Yes, it is. So it's a preprint, Smike. So the preprint means they are not. It's not yet published. It's not yet in a scientifically reviewed journal, but what they do is they put it online onto this database called bioRxiv. And when they do that, it's cool because it means that it's going to go without... There's no barrier for anyone to go and download it. It also means that you have kind of the first dibs, if you will, at this particular finding. So if someone else puts out this paper and it is peer-reviewed, you still get the credit. So that's one way to kind of protect yourself from losing credit and the work for it. How will Nature Science Cell make money? So Smikes, they actually have a clause in their submission process that it cannot be a preprint. And so they will not accept your paper if there's already a preprint out there. So that's their workaround for not putting up preprints that people, have to go to them to download the paper. So meaning that this is not going to Science, Cell, or Nature, the top tier journals, but it's still a really, really cool study. So just wanted to bring up, we're doing a quick little snippet on what the heck these Femme Fatales are. Could you preprint your research? Me personally, that would be such a middle finger that there would probably be lawsuits over that. Because you still have to acknowledge, the funding agencies, and you have to have all the people who are on the paper. There could be a lot of things on there that would be less than ideal, Smikes. Yeah. But what this paper was highlighting was that there is a defense mechanism in fireflies. It's called a toxic cardiotonic steroid. And that's a defense mechanism of these fireflies. When they are eaten, this molecule is released from the fireflies. And, well, it's already inside the fireflies, and it's released, and what it does is it shuts down neurons. It's a neurotoxin. And the question was, how are the fireflies carrying this toxin immune to it? Is there an animal, and there's a firefly that actually eats this firefly. It's called a Femme Fatale. That also is somehow resilient to this. And so we're going to go into a little bit about the Femme Fatale, because they are quite an incredible species of firefly. We actually had some samples that we looked at a little while ago of them under the microscope, and they do not naturally have the ability to have this this toxin. So let's learn about these Femme Fatale fireflies.
If you think there's something romantic about fireflies glowing on a warm summer night, you'd be right. But what you don't see is the dark side of this luminous display. Firefly flashes are a secret code, a language of light. The light comes from a masterful bit of chemistry, a bioluminescent reaction that generates light but no heat.
We will talk a little bit more about bioluminescence as well.
So, what are they saying? Well, males on the wing are advertising themselves to females with a bit of sexy skywriting. Take the common eastern firefly. His signature move? A fishhook-shaped maneuver.
Lady Lara Croft, I'm glad that makes me happy that you were just learning or enjoying fireflies. You're going to find out about this additional species of firefly that is a little bit more misbehaved than what you might predict. And yes, we did have a special guest on, we're going to say approaching a year, whose research is in fireflies. And this study is a cool evolutionary study on resilience to toxins of this firefly species called the Femme Fatale group.
Which is why his species is sometimes called the Big Dipper. Her reply is more subtle. A single slow pulse from her heart-shaped lantern.
We actually did look at under the microscope. You can actually see physical differences between male and female. In particular, that light organ, it's different sizes, different shape, and different structures.
Our Big Dipper comes bearing a nuptial gift. A present of more than 200 assorted nutrients. Kind of like a box of chocolates. Here's the handoff. Some are lucibuphagins, defensive chemicals fireflies secrete to ward off predators like
Hi, Nelf. Welcome in.
spiders and birds. These defensive chemicals may help protect her. Firefly codes are so reliable that anyone can speak the language. But we're not the only code breakers listening in.
So, Lady Lara Croft, if you wanted to, and you too, Quath, because both of y'all were watching for your fireflies tonight, you could trick them. If you put a little film of light over your phone that make that yellow hue, you can actually talk back to them, and they will actually come to your phone because they think it's a replying female. So it's their detection mechanism is very rudimentary with that. It's not smell driven, it's highly visual, which makes sense because they've evolved this bioluminescent feature.
Meet Photurus. She's also a firefly. A larger, stronger one than the big.
And you might actually be seeing these. No, so Quath, you might actually attract one of these. So you can see it's bigger than your classic firefly. It's also more menacing.
Dippers. But she has a weakness. Her species can't make its own lucibuphagins. They have fewer.
And lucibuphagen is the word of the day. I will guarantee you I will forget it. Not because I don't want to remember it. It's just because lucibuphagen. And lucibuphagen is that's a word. You have it spelled. Let's see if they actually spelled it correctly here. I don't know if that's correct. Lucibuphagen. Let's actually look it up because I don't know offhand how to spell that. Let's see what it's called. Hold on. All right, so it is spelled correctly on the closed caption chat. Lucibuphagin is the defensive steroid produced by several species of firefly to make them unpalatable to spiders and birds. And then there's the chemical structure of it as well. Yeah, and it's it's quite the term, right? Lucibuphagin. I remember Greg was also telling us about them, and we at first were like, what? But it was good. It was good.
Make its own lucibuphagens. They have fewer defenses against predators. So she sets a trap to get some. She mimics the glow of other firefly females, luring in the males of that species. When Mr.
And this is a question that unfortunately no one's really addressed yet. How do these animals know what to mimic? And the reason that's an interesting question is how much active learning goes into their behavior? How much do they actually go out and look for other light patterns and then intentionally try to do those same patterns? Or are they just randomly doing whatever they see in terms of patterning? Or if there's some innate preference for certain patterns, like, right, how do they know they're doing mimicry of something versus calling for their own males to get? There's a lot of little bifurcations of the pathway here, and a lot of learning and a lot of either social learning or mimicry or combinations of things, maybe epigenetics at play, that are not understood. So there's a lot in firefly biology, like Bio 101 of fireflies, that's not really revealed in any way. So
species. When Mr. Big Dipper shows up with his chemical gift, she moves in, sucks up those defensive chemicals that she desperately needs, then makes a meal of the rest of him. Most fireflies don't even eat during the few weeks they spend as adults. But he's not totally defenseless. If she's not quick enough, he can secrete a gooey compound that sticks in her jaw and lets him escape. Another gift from the master chemist.
Big Dipper, so they call him Big Dipper because of this, the type of mating flight they do. It has this, like, here, we'll go back in the video.
Firefly. His signature move? A fishhook-shaped maneuver, which is why his species is sometimes called the Big Dipper.
So again, just because of the flight pattern that he has, I guess if you squint, looks a little bit like the Big Dipper star pattern. I apologize, Lady Lara Croft. I'm sorry. I usually give warnings. I just thought a bug would be okay. But yes, ma'am. You got it. So there's two options that this insect will have. She will either eat the male. Eating the male will result in the assimilation of the lucibuphagen into her body, and so now she also has toxicity protection against, well, toxic protection where if a bird or something tried to eat her, they'd spit her right back out. So they don't fully eat the animal. It's a taste perception issue. And then once they eat it, or like it's in their mouth, they spit it out. So the question the researchers had was, what allows these animals to have this ability to be protected from these toxins? Why are these animals resilient to the toxins while others aren't? There must be some genetic reason for it.
Another gift from the master chemist.
So they did some comparative sequencing. Let's actually go to one of the figures here in the paper. Boop, boop, boop. They did some sequencing. Hold, please. Let me grab the figure. Here we go. They did some sequencing to compare that particular region of the genome and identify what changes are present and if those changes are changes in nucleotides. So, like, is there a change in the genetic sequence, or is there a duplication, so an additional copy of the genome, or if there's something totally different happening. What they actually found was that there were duplication events of the genes that confer protection against this molecule. In particular, in these Femme Fatale, or the ones that are eating the other lightning bugs, there's additional genetic copies of this gene, and there's these extra mutations in there that allow them to have the protection against the toxin. And so they really wanted to prove that this is what was going on. At this point, it's just a suspicion, right? If you're looking at this phylogenetic tree, you're seeing these are the mutation sites, like this P is an A, this V amino acid is an I, etc., etc. If that's actually what's happening, they wanted to be able to prove it. And so what did they do? They took the gene that they suspected. So here is the normal copy, the wild type gene without mutation. And then there's all these variants that they identified. They took all of these variants and put them into a fruit fly. Now you might be like, Blunt, why on earth are they putting it into a fruit fly? A fruit fly does not normally have protection against this molecule. A fruit fly, usually if you expose it to this toxin, it dies. So the question is, if we put this gene into a fruit fly, if it is actually the gene that is protecting the fireflies, they should survive no problem. And that's actually what they end up finding. So this is increased concentration of the toxin along the x-axis, and the y-axis is survival. And you see the wild type or normal fly is dead pretty fast, but when they add in these additional mutants that they've identified within the fireflies, they live much longer and at much better, like they're resilient to these doses. And so that's a standard genetic question, is that they want to prove that the gene is not only necessary for a behavior that you see, but also sufficient. So those are the two big components. Again, if they showed sufficiency, so they showed if you put in this gene into a fruit fly, it is sufficient to rescue or imbue them with the ability to be resilient against the toxin. Thank you for the lurk, Debs. How much longer they still die? So this is not a dose response curve in terms of time spikes. This is a dose response curve just solely on dose. So this is after 24 hours in this panel C. After 24 hours, you're comparing the death along there at these different concentrations. And so what's cool about it is at these even at these lower concentrations of the toxin, you're still getting a fair bit of, like, a very minimal amount of survival of these. The wild type and this one mutant as well also has a very low percentage survival. We don't know how much longer these animals live, so Smikes, that would be something to ask as well. I'd imagine that what you can do is maybe if you just take this middle concentration, the 10 micromolar, and put it onto their food source of their fruit fly and just grow them up on it, right? Like, just do a 30-day time trial and see across 30 days how many live. That would be a good follow-up experiment to do, for sure. But this shows sufficiency. The gene is sufficient to be put into an organism that usually doesn't have protection and gives it protection. What they have not shown is it necessary? The way that you would do that is you would remove the gene from the lightning bug or from the firefly. If you remove the gene from the firefly and then they are no longer resilient or resistant to the toxin, then you've shown both elements of this animal and, like, the importance of this gene. They only did one side of it, presumably because genetic modification in the firefly is not yet straightforward or easy. Fruit fly life around 28 days. In the wild, Smikes is 2 weeks. In the lab, you can keep them going pretty easily to 45 days. If you pay attention to them, you can get them to 80. So you should be able to do it no problem. And you obviously would do a control experiment with unfed any toxin individuals to show that they're not dying, or they are either dying at the same death rate as your regular flies from old age rather than from toxin. Genetics of it in this paper. Let's do a smidge on bioluminescence, how about? And then there is a really cool TED Talk on the beauty of fireflies.
Imagine a place so dark you can't see the nose on your face. Eyes open or closed, it's all the same. Because the sun never shines there. Up ahead, you see a light. When you creep in to investigate, a blue light flits around you. I could watch this forever, you think. But you can't, because the mouth of an anglerfish has just sprung open and eaten you alive. You are just one of many creatures at the bottom of the ocean who learned too late to appreciate the power of bioluminescence. Bioluminescence refers to the ability of certain living things to create light. The human body can make stuff like earwax and toenails. But these organisms can turn parts of their body into glow sticks. It's like nature made them ready to rave. Why? In one way or another, bioluminescence improves a living thing's chances of survival.
Dory, but she was going to P. Sherman 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney, Lady Lara Croft. So while she did warn you about that anglerfish, she didn't pay good enough attention. She still got in danger, Lady Lara Croft. That's silly Dory.
Take the firefly. Its ability to glow green helps it attract a mate on a warm summer night. But it's just one of many living things that can glow. The railroad worm, Phryxothrix hirtus, can light up its body in two colors, red and green. Would you eat something that looks like an airport runway? Neither would any sensible predator. The flashing lights keep the worms safe. Then there's the deep-sea shrimp, Acanthophyra purpurea. When it feels threatened, it spews a cloud of glowing goo from its mouth. Who doesn't run the other way when they've just been puked on? Plus, that puke attracts bigger predators who want to eat the shrimp's enemy. So what if you can't bioluminesce? No problem. There are other ways for living things to make bioluminescence work for them, even if they weren't born with the equipment to glow. Let's revisit the anglerfish, moments before it tried to eat you. That glowing bait on top of its head? It comes from a pocket of skin called the esca. The esca holds bioluminescent bacteria. The anglerfish can't glow there by itself, so it holds a sac of glowing bacteria instead. Remember the firefly? It can actually make itself glow. Inside its lantern are two chemicals, a luciferin and a luciferase.
And actually what's cool is that the luciferase and the luciferin have been used in a lot of scientific research. We actually knew far more about these two molecules than we did know about the firefly. What you do is if you're trying to measure a chemical reaction, you can measure it with the amount of glow that you have. And so what you would do is you would get a molecule and you'd attach a luciferin to either end of it, and then you'd insert a luciferase cut site. And then if you're trying to see how quickly a molecule is trying to be broken down, you add luciferase and you look at the curve of how quickly there's light that appears inside the vials that you're measuring from. And you can actually put it into a machine and have it output these curvatures and tell you how much light there is being given off with each one of these samples. And so it's actually been used as a chemical reaction indicator for luciferase. So we've been using it for ages. They've moved on now to other, not necessarily more reliable enzymatic reactions, but ones that are more easily genetically manipulated, where we have a bunch of variants of them. But there's still a fair number of samples that when you study, you go into, you use luciferase and the luciferin assay. And again, it's just giving off light to tell you how much of a chemical reaction is happening. Anglerfish bite their lures. I would hope not. But that is an interesting question, because I know, as Smike's Lady Croft says, we bite our own tongues. I'd imagine they wouldn't do as well if you, those teeth seem a little sharper than ours. So you might want to be careful.
When firefly luciferase and luciferin mix together in the presence of oxygen and fuel for the cell called ATP, the chemical reaction gives off energy in the form of light. Once scientists figured out how the firefly creates its luciferase and luciferin, they used genetic engineering to make this light-producing reaction occur inside other living things that can't glow. For example, they inserted the genes, or instructions, for a cell to create firefly luciferase and luciferin into a tobacco plant. Once there, the tobacco plant...
Most organisms that have the mitochondria spikes have ATP that they use. There's also there's other forms of energy molecules too, but ATP is that primary one. Everything that I can think of also has some kind of chemical reaction on that, because it's releasing one of the phosphates from that molecule results in a release of energy. So you go from ATP to ADP, TP triphosphate, DP diphosphate, and that you're going down in that cutting of the phosphate releases energy, and you go from a higher energy state to a low energy state.
Followed the instructions slipped into its DNA and lit up like a Christmas tree.
Not only does it work in tobacco, but we've also done it a lot in bacteria. So when you're trying to measure a bacteria molecule and seeing how you can also link it to that enzymatic reaction, how quickly it's producing a molecule. So let's say you want to see how quickly a bacteria produces some molecule that gives it resilience against something. Hello, Risto! Risto, how was your shower? How's your shower, Risto? Did you have a good shower? They can. Yep, they just put in the luciferase and the luciferin, and you also put it in, Lady Laura Croft, with what's called a promoter. So that means in a upstream regulating part of a gene that tells the gene where to be turned on. So it can be something like actin, which is in all of your it's a solid cytoskeletal gene expressed in all cells. So if you hooked it up to actin, you'd make everything turn it on. The whole plant would glow well. But if you only had it in one particular subsection of the plant, then only that particular one would glow. Guys, make sure to follow the one, the other amazing Ristorak88. Risto, extremely handsome, extremely kind, creator of the calendar, the Risto calendar. He's an absolute legend. He's extremely handsome. He's selling it for benefit a nearby orphanage. He is also a gamer and a mental health chatterer extraordinaire. And we love you, Risto, for everything you do. Theoretically possible to have a glow stick skeleton. So Nell, yes, because what you would do is you could add in the gene of whatever promoter is corresponding to bone growth. You can link luciferin and luciferase to that, and then you would have both expressed there. Don Carlo! Chat, the stream scribe is actually live right now. Please go follow him. He's extremely... Look at it. He's right there. He's like, hey, he's so handsome! He's so handsome, chat. He's handsome. Go follow the stream scribe now. Now go tell him hello. Go tell him hello. He's very cool, very hip. Look at it. He's so Carlo! We love Carlo here, chat. Go follow the stream scribe, folks. He's a fancy pants speaky out chatter for Carlo, the stream scribe as well. In 42 seconds. In 42 seconds, we'll give Carlo that stream scribe. But Risto, I hope you're doing well. We're talking about fireflies, Risto, and there's this one species called the Femme Fatale, who's not toxic, and so she acquires her toxicity by eating other species of firefly that do have toxicity. And then we rabbit hole a little bit into the bioluminescent ability of these animals, in particular the fireflies, and how they make it. And so some bioluminescence Risto are stemming from bacteria and other creatures. So like in the certain fish species, like our lamprey, you don't have the fish is not creating the bioluminescence. it's bacteria that the fish has in its little organ that do, versus the fireflies are making their own. It's not through other components, but rather their own reaction, which is kind of neat. Blueberry, there is no command like that. How you doing, Blueberry? So then, yeah, we're just talking a little bit now about the bioluminescent component. And then Risto, what was cool is it should not be Blueberry. Absolutely not Blueberry. We have a special one for Carlo already. Plus, his name is Carlo, not Carlos Blueberry. Blueberry! So, Risto, what was cool was that this toxin is normally, like, the reason that these fireflies have it is because the prey spit them out. The predators spit them out, so that way they're not eaten by, birds or other animals. It allows them to survive and reproduce. And then the question was, okay, how genetically are they able to do this? And what are the genetics behind this resistance? And so they did some genetic sequencing to identify and figure out where does the resistance is coming from. Is it coming from, let's say, a gene mutation, a gene duplication, or what have you? They then they identified it was a gene duplication, so a duplicate gene that had a mutation in it. They put that gene into a fruit fly. Normally, fruit flies do not have resistance to this toxin. And lo and behold, Risto, when you put it into a fly, that fly now has resistance to that toxin. A beautiful piece of biology that they did.
The beauty of bioluminescence, unlike the light from the sun or an incandescent bulb, is that it's not hot. It takes place in a range of temperatures that don't burn a living thing. And unlike a glow stick, which fades out as the chemicals inside get used up, bioluminescent reactions use replenishable resources. That's one reason engineers are trying to develop bioluminescent trees. Just think, if planted on the side of highways, they could light the way using only oxygen and other freely available clean resources to run.
There are some questions about if you made bioluminescent trees, how that would respond and interact with the environment, right? We know moths get really freaked out when there's large light sources around, right? Because the way they navigate, they think that the light outside of your house is the moon. You'd also wonder if you're using too close in terms of the light of a firefly, if that would be at all similar to what would happen, in a tree, if that would throw off the fireflies and many other ecosystem changes. And the other side of the coin, it'd be really cool to have that kind of reusable, renewable energy, where you have trees that are producing oxygen and helping the environment, and at the same time they're naturally producing the light without any negative CO2 emissions and pollutants in the air. So there's interesting sides to the argument.
Talk about survival advantage. That could help our planet live longer. Do you find yourself thinking of other ways to put bioluminescence to good use? That glow stick you swing at a rave may help you find a mate, but how else can bioluminescence improve your survival? If you start thinking in this way, you have seen the light.
Hello, Astronomy Show. Disrupting sleep cycles, night predation, stealth, light pollution. Yep, but Astronomy Show does sound cool, right? But also Astronomy Show, the counter argument, if those are our arguments of why it's bad, the street lights are doing the exact same thing anyway. I'm not saying that justifies having the lit up trees to be put in, but it is something just to think about. Guys, make sure to follow Astronomy Show. If you like space and science and astronomy, you can follow Astronomy Show. How you doing, Astronomy Show? Welcome in. So let's learn a little bit more, again, about now that we know that it's bioluminescence that is happening, it's acting with the luciferase enzyme and the luciferin molecule, a little bit more about fireflies and their booties, and then we'll watch this TED Talks about from Dr. Sarah Lewis, and she's doing some of the first-hand research on the fireflies. That's a good way to round out.
This episode is supported by CuriosityStream. For centuries, humans have been harnessing chemistry to create explosive, awe-inspiring light.
As Mike says, booties in the face. Now I have to get some. Had to be, it happens, Mike. Had to happen.
shows. But our celebrations aren't Earth's only dazzling light displays. Nature's got fireworks of its own. Nearly all life on Earth is ultimately powered by light, but some special species have figured out how to make light for themselves. Our planet is full of creatures with the ability to bioluminesce. And not every animal that glows is bioluminescent. Animals like these jellyfish are fluorescent. They only glow after absorbing and emitting other light. But bioluminescent species carry their own light factories. Inside their bodies, chemicals called luciferins, along with oxygen and some ATP, react together with the help of an enzyme called luciferase to give off light. And you can see this chemistry in action right before sunset on a summer night. Fireflies aren't really flies at all, they're beetles. Their nightly dances are stunningly beautiful, but that light show is really one big mating display. Now, it's usually male fireflies that do the flying, while females sit and enjoy the show. Firefly bioluminescence is a form of sexual selection. Like a peacock's feathers or an elk's antlers, brighter and more intense light signals that you're a healthy mate with good genes. Of course, like any dance, you have to get the timing right too.
Not just this, so what's cool about this sexual selection is that usually there is a trade-off between the organisms. So if you have this really bright light that you're showing off, you're more likely to be preferred by a female. However, the brighter the light you have, the more likely you're to be identified by a predator. And so it's a balancing act. There's always some good with certain kinds of light, selection, and then other times there's bad. So it's that happy medium. And you're always there's this genetic cost risk analysis of what genes will actually get passed on, what is successful and what's not. Show me your underglow exactly, Lady Laura Croft. Or a woman who forgets her textbook and wears a bikini. Look, Smikes, I can't help you if she kept forgetting her book and if she was rushing over from the pool. I cannot help that, Smikes. Smikes is highlighting my shameful stories in my ecapades. Apparently, I have no idea what people are telling me or saying.
And each species has their own rhythm. Males of the species Photinus pyralis always flash while flying up. If she sees his signal, 2 seconds later the female blinks in return. The male glides down, then blinks again, homing in on the female's response and hoping there's a mating opportunity waiting for him when he gets there. But the line between love and death is a fine one. Females of the genus Photurus have earned the name Femme Fatale fireflies. They mimic the flash timing of other species' females, luring in unsuspecting suitors and eating them. They harvest chemicals from the male's bodies to repel their main predator, spiders. From fungi to worms, this ability to create chemical light has evolved independently many times. But to really appreciate nature's fireworks show, we have to take a plunge. Oceans contain 99% of the habitable space on the planet, and most of Earth's bioluminescence happens down there. It's hard to believe, but researchers estimate 3/4 of all species in the ocean produce their own light, and at every depth. Only they don't just use it to find mates. These are dinoflagellates, tiny marine plankton that are found throughout Earth's oceans. You can't see them right now, but watch this.
And what's cool is if y'all wanted to see something like that, they're in Puerto Rico, the west side of the island has a bay that's like this. It's full of these dinoflagellates, and you can go swim in it in the evening. And if you slosh the water with your hands, it'll glow. The water will glow, and if you swim in it, it'll continue to glow. It's a beautiful spectacle to be able to see. My friend, coworker, she went to Puerto Rico not too long ago. She's from there originally. She went back to for a little vacation, and she was able to just hang out and do that little swim there. And Extel and Cat PM 720, welcome on in. We're talking some science news tonight. In particular, we're talking about Femme Fatale fireflies and bioluminescence as well. So Femme Fatale fireflies will eat your regular everyday fireflies and in order to acquire their toxicity. Deep shame there isn't more research for deep ocean. Yeah, it is a shame, Smikes, but it's just how the finances work out is that everything has to be in a human context, which is kind of frustrating. And because there could eventually be something beneficial to humans if you study these animals, it's just short-sightedness that keeps people from funding it earlier on. Well, welcome on in, Kat. Welcome in. How you doing, Kat?
If they're disturbed at night, they light up. They make a different luciferin molecule than fireflies, one that emits blue light. Now, this blue glow can be seen in crashing waves, in the wakes of ships. But why would a creature too small to swim from a predator want to advertise its location? Well, have you ever heard the saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend?
Maybe. But it looks just like that, Lady Lara Croft. Astronomy show, we have bioluminescence in the water in Florida. Your Kennedy Space Center. Very cool. Astronomy show. Can you go swimming in it? Hello, Grimly. Grimly thought he could sneak in. Grimly thought he could sneak in, but Grimly cannot sneak in because Grimly is amazing. Grimly is kind, and we even have a special Grimly command here because of how much we love Grimly.
Be excellent to each other.
We love you, Grimly. No, Grimly, you're totally fine, Grimly. I hope you had a great day. Love your face, Grimly. Love your face. We're talking about fireflies right now. We went through our first news story talking about a new species of gecko, which is kind of cool. There are kayaking tours. Ooh, that sounds cool, astronomy show. When Jessica went, they did go out on a boat. It wasn't kayaking. They went out on the boat to this bay and then just jumped in the water, and it was just lighting up. It'd be amazing to see something like that.
If a shrimp or other predator disturbs the dinos, light can attract the attention of things that eat shrimp. It's like a chemical burglar alarm.
Hello, Racco. There is a new species of gecko. Racco, it was discovered in Australia, and that was our first science news story of the day. So it was just a fundamental analysis of what this new species is and proving it's a new species. So they looked at some genetic testing to see where in the phylogenetic or genetic family tree it falls into. Is it dissimilar enough from existing animals? It was, and they also took some morphological or physical measurements to analyze like all those differences and how those worked. And it's very basic, but it's still cool, and it's something that I'm going to try to keep bringing back of like every week. If there's a new animal discovered, we'll talk about at least one of them every week. And Racco, I'll put the paper on the Discord if you're interested. We have that mentioned on stream category, and the figures and the paper will all go up there after the stream, so you have access to it if you want to see and learn about it. We also we watched a video on it as well. If you don't, we'll have past broadcasts on the YouTube. The video that we looked at was the defense mechanism of close relatives of these geckos. So they are night hunters, Racco, and what they do when they're hunting at night is a possibility that snakes or something else might want to eat them. And the way they ward them off is they release pheromones, stinky smells, to keep them away, which is, I think, really cool. So they essentially toot to get the snakes to go away. And here is that bioluminescence. Whoa! In Florida. You also do, Reiko, listen. My daughter farts all the time. She just sits in my arms and like, you know what? That's hilarious. This is how I know she's my daughter. We're going to be laughing at that for ages. Because I can't. I do chuckle. Yeah, so this is something in Florida you can do too. Field trip, chat? Field trip? Bioluminescent field trip, anyone? And again, I like that it's used in a strategy to protect the actual dinoflagellates. Like if there's a shrimp or something trying to eat them, they light up, and that attracts other predators.
Species put bioluminescence to use in dozens of ways. Some prey species, like this shrimp, spew luminescent clouds, escaping behind a shiny smokescreen. Some squid even sacrifice entire limbs so the rest of them can escape, like light-up lizard tails. Bioluminescence is even used for camouflage, matching the color and brightness of sunlight to mask a silhouette from below. Of course, hunters of mass...
Yeah, so Lady Lara Croft, if you are standing still in the water, they won't be triggered. But if you're walking into the water and splashing the water, it's that disturbance that'll make them trigger the light. And so if you're swooshing around with your hand, like it's wild. Like I've seen the videos, Lady Lara Croft, and Jessica took some pictures too, and she just is sloshing her hand in the water, and every slosh is just lighting up the water source there. It's really, really cool.
Master the light game too. Some use it as a lure, while some flash to stun their prey. Some, like this deep sea dragonfish, even use bioluminescent patches as searchlights in the dark. What's incredible is that even in habitats where the sun almost never reaches, light has become an essential part of life. Whether you're at the bottom of the ocean or on your back porch, you can appreciate some of nature's brightest ideas. Stay curious. This episode is...
That was a good summary. So let's quickly jump now into Sarah Lewis, who will give us a little bit more of a deep dive into a little bit more fundamental firefly biology. Then we'll go back to the paper, we'll finish analyzing the paper, and then we'll move on to the next topic of the evening.
As a scientist, and also as a human being, I've been trying to make myself susceptible to wonder. I think Jason Webley last night called it conspiring to be part of the magic. So it's fortunate that my career as a biologist lets me dive deeply into the lives of some truly wondrous creatures.
Which I love her mentality about it. You hear it's not immediately about human health, it's just learning about the biology around us. Watching a pond of dolphins swimming through bioluminescence. Oh, you got to see that, Nelf? That is really cool. Nelf, did you get to touch the water yourself? Like, were you able to trigger the bioluminescence as well? I would love to see that as well. Like the dolphins swimming through. Like even the boat splashing it would be a cool thing to see, but the dolphins make it already cooler.
That share our planet. Fireflies. Now, for many of you, I know that fireflies might conjure up some really great memories. Childhood, summertime, even other TED Talks. Maybe...
Oh, very cool, Nell. Very cool.
Something like this. My seduction into the world of fireflies began when I was back in graduate school. One evening, I was sitting out in my backyard in North Carolina, and suddenly, these silent sparks rose up all around me, and I began to wonder, how do these creatures make light? And what's with all this flashing? Are they talking to one another? And what happens after the lights go out? I've been lucky enough to answer some of these questions as I've explored this nocturnal world. Now, if you've ever seen or even heard about fireflies, then you'll know how magically they can transform our everyday landscape into something ethereal and otherworldly. And this happens around the globe, like this hillside in the Smoky Mountains that I saw transformed into a living cascade of light by the eerie glows of these blue ghost fireflies. Or a roadside river that I visited in Japan as it was giving birth to the slow, floating flashes of these Genji fireflies. Or in Malaysia, the mangrove trees that I watched blossom nightly, not with flowers, but with the lights of 1,000 kleep-kleep fireflies, all blinking together in stunning synchrony. These luminous landscapes still fill me with wonder, and they keep me connected to the magic of the natural world. And I find it amazing that they're created by these tiny insects. In person, fireflies are charming. They're charismatic. They've been celebrated in art and in poetry for centuries. As I've traveled around the world, I've met many thoughtful people who've told me that God put fireflies on Earth for humans to enjoy. Other creatures can enjoy them too. I think these graceful insects are truly miraculous because they so beautifully illuminate the creative improvisation of evolution. They've been shaped by two powerful evolutionary forces: natural selection, the struggle for survival, and sexual selection, the struggle for reproductive opportunity.
Flashing and the toxins. Two sides of the same evolutionary coin for this. The magic of the natural world. Now, I wish more people would think about the magic of the natural world instead of just thinking about maybe the financial opportunity and immediate finances that you can bring in, which unfortunately is what we've devolved into. But just something to keep thinking about. Imagine if they could emit coherent light laser fireflies. Well, astronomy show that might get a little scary if they were shooting lasers towards us, but it would be cool, but a little scary.
As a firefly junkie, the past 20 years have been quite an exciting ride. Together with my students at Tufts University and other colleagues, we've made lots of new discoveries about fireflies. Their courtship and sex lives, their treachery and murder. So today I'd like to share with you just a couple of tales that we've brought back from our collective adventures into this hidden world. Fireflies belong to a very beautiful and diverse group of insects, the beetles. Worldwide, there are more than 2,000 firefly species, and these have evolved remarkably diverse courtship signals, that is, different ways to find and attract mates. Around 150...
By the way, just from a personal note, I think this one's adorable. The antennal structures, it just makes it look like it has giant eyebrows, and I just can't even, y'all. It's so cute.
A million years ago, the very first fireflies probably looked like this. They flew during the daytime, and they didn't light up. Instead, males used their fantastic antennae to sniff out perfumes given off by their females. In other fireflies, it's only the females who light up. They're attractively plump and wingless. So every night they climb up onto perches and they glow brightly for hours to attract their flying but unlit males. And still other fireflies, both sexes, use quick, bright flashes to find their mates. Here in North America, we have more than 100 different kinds of firefly that have the remarkable ability to shine energy out from their bodies in the form of light. How do they do that? It seems totally magical, but these bioluminescent signals arise from carefully orchestrated chemical reactions that happen inside the firefly lantern. The main star is an enzyme called luciferase, which in the course of evolution has figured out a way to wrap its tiny arms around an even smaller molecule called luciferin, in the process getting it so excited that it actually gives off light. Incredible. But how could these bright lights have benefited some proto-firefly? To answer this question, we need to flip back in the family album to some baby pictures. Fireflies completely reinvent their bodies as they grow. They spend the vast majority of their lifetime, up to 2 years, in this larval form.
And that is cool because of the larval form is how also it explains why we can also the adult stage only lives for that 2 weeks during the summer versus in the rest of the year you're not seeing, adult fireflies. You might be, well, where are they? If the developmental stages are able to last in a year to 2 years, then that's how they're able to come out, and then survive the winters because they're burrowing underground for it. Fireflies, there's no heat on these now. So bioluminescence of this variety, that is not giving off heat because of the kind of...
Together, we can rule the galaxy.
Sunset, we're working. The one, the only JP has arrived. JP, thank you for the resub. 11 months, JP. That's almost a year. How you doing, JP? Guys, make sure to follow the one, the only amazing JP, Sunset Woodworking, Woodcrafter Extraordinaire. How is everything going, JP? Tell me all the things. And hello, Invisible Dimensions. Welcome in. Years ago, I moved from the East Coast to Cali. Told my new friends I missed the lightning bugs. Someone didn't believe me that they were real. I thought I was making it up. Really? See, Invisible Dimensions, I've heard the other direction. We've had folks who'd be like, oh, I live on the West Coast and there's no fireflies. We're like, what are you talking about? And it turns out, actually, that there are fireflies on the West Coast. They're just fireflies that have lost the ability to light up in the adult stage. They light up instead during the larval stages. Why? Like, what benefit there is in lining up as a larva, that hasn't been really figured out, unfortunately, yet. Getting ready for a featured artist event. Ooh, what is it, JP? Are you going to be selling stuff, JP? Guys, again, go check out JP Sunset Woodworking. Would love you, JP. Spooked by suddenly by a cellar spider. Need to take a break. No worries. Give him now. Take care. JP, are you showing off more of the wood that you've worked on, or what else the fanciness are you gonna do? Don't think I've seen them on the Florida coast. I'm wondering. Yeah, I'm thinking about that too, Nelf. When we vacationed down in Florida with my family, I don't feel like I've seen them on the coast. I wonder if there's something with the water and the salt concentration in the air that makes it less desirable for them to be there. I wonder about that. I'm not sure. I'm going to be selling a bunch of new products. Whatever doesn't sell, we will do a shop drop. JP! Will you please share when the shop drop is live, sir? Please, JP. JP Sunset Woodworking of Amazingness, JP.
Their main goal here, like my teenagers, is to eat and grow. And Firefly light first originated in these juveniles.
Thank you, JP.
Every single Firefly larva can light up.
So that's the big catch right there. So there are dark fireflies in the adult stage, but the reason they're still characterized as fireflies is because they light up during the larval stage. And so while it's disappointing in their adult to be like, I don't understand why there's this dark firefly, why are we counting a firefly? Because it does have a light up component throughout its life cycle, that's why you still call it a firefly. Most thank you, JP! You handsome devil.
Even when their adults can't. But what's the point to being so conspicuous? Well, we know that these juveniles make nasty tasting chemicals that help them survive their extended childhood. So we think these lights first evolved as a warning, a neon sign that says, toxic, stay away, to any would-be predators. It took many million years before these bright lights evolved into a smart communication tool that could be used not just to ward off potential predators, but to bring in potential mates.
Hi, Humbler John, another maker and crafter coming up on in here whose birthday was this past week. Chat, make sure to follow Humbler John, if not for his amazing creations, such as the 3D printing wizardry that he does, but also because it was his birthday this past week. Please go follow Humbler John as well. Remember, birthday follows count double. Can I confirm it? No. Am I okay with it? Yes. Hi, Dacum! Love you, Dacum. Sleep well, Dacum. Sleep well, Dacum. Humans have those attributes. So, Crystal, I think... So, the hypothesis makes sense that if it evolved originally as a way to ward off predators and then got co-opted into communication, that makes sense to me. However, for us to be able to have it from an evolutionary perspective, there needs to be a reason that we would need to glow. It's just not just because it's cool. And communication, co-opting of communication is much harder to happen the first thing that would need to happen would be there have to be something easier for it to evolve for. And toxicity is one of those. Remember, bright colors for toxins, most animals that are toxic have. This is just like a next stage of that. Which is kind of neat, I think. The energy conversion is 100% of the spectrum. We see no significant waste heat, which is IR. Thank you, Astronomy Show. We blush. We do blush, but we don't glow, Smikes. We don't glow. Well, I guess, you know, not the luciferase glow. You glow every day I see you, Smikes, because you're very handsome. So is, you know, Andrew CZ with the Greco-Roman god. You know, everything. All right.
Driven now by sexual selection, some adult fireflies, like this proud male, evolved a shiny new glow-in-the-dark lantern that would let them take courtship to a whole new level. These adults only live a few weeks, and now they're single-mindedly focused on sex. That is, on propelling their genes into the next firefly generation. So we can follow this male out into the field as he joins hundreds of other males who are all showing off their new courtship signals. It's amazing to think that the luminous displays we admire here and in fact everywhere around the world are actually the silent love songs of male fireflies. They're flying and flashing their hearts out. I still find it very romantic.
I love you 3000.
But meanwhile,
Maybe I love you 3000, Smikes. How about that? Did you question that, Smikes?
where are all the females? Well, they're lounging down below, surveying their options. They have plenty of males to choose from, and these females turn out to be very picky. When a female sees a flash,
Missing seeing fireflies around here. Saw them in Iowa all the time, not so much in Wisconsin. So JP, part of that is the area which you live, like in the US. The other part too is there have been a lot of habitat loss and light pollution that has actually led to even bigger of a loss of fireflies, where you used to have plenty of them and now you don't have them at all. So it's a very sad constant loss of them, unfortunately. And we hope that it'll slow down, but there have been some evidence that you're able to bring them back, like if you get rid of the light sources, but it's not great. Guys, what is great though is one of our friendos that just stuck on here. Please go follow Old Drum Leatherworks, who is a leatherworking wizard extraordinaire. We do love Old Drum here, so please go drop them that follow. Very much love and appreciate you. Thank you, Old Drum, for being here. Peaceful to watch late at night. JP, it also reminds me of summer as well. It's you. Yeah, it is you, Old Drum. It reminds me of summer, JP, and it just like has a bunch of, like, you know, precious memory connotations, and I really like seeing fireflies. JP, we were talking about this Femme Fatale type of firefly, and what those fireflies do is they actually eat. They are not toxic, so they eat other fireflies that are toxic. So they trick males of a different species to coming towards them to mate, and then they attack them and eat them. And that reacquires that toxicity. Or acquires that toxicity. They're called the Femme Fatales. And actually you can tell if you're going to have one or not. The way you tell that is pretty straightforward. If you look on the ground, JP, hi V, welcome in. If you look on the ground, so in the air, those are the males that you probably caught. The bottom, at the ground, those ones are the male or the females. If you look down and that female that's flashing is bigger than the male significantly, then it's probably a Femme Fatale species. They're larger compared to the species that they're impersonating. Uh-oh, Old Drum, did the streaming computer go rip? Old drum. I don't like the idea. If,
Don't you like me a little bit?
Hi, Big Gamey!
Like you a little bit.
Huh, I heard you like me a little bit.
Well, maybe just a little bit.
Big Gamey, we're pouring one out right now for Old Drum Leatherworks' computer that went RIP possibly today, if not a couple of days ago. So Big Gamey, please.
What drink?
I won't pour it out, Old Drum, on the floor just because, like, you know, we're in the computer room, but we'll have a beverage item with you. There's certain beetles that do that to mimic to get dinner. Yes, Grimly, it's actually... That mimicry is used a fair bit across the animal kingdom. There's olfactory mimicry, so having them smell like whatever they're trying to impersonate to get them in. There's also visual mimicry, so like Big Gamey had a question a while ago about this spider that mimicked an ant, and so that would be like a visual mimicry that you'd also be able to get. So there's a lot of different avenues of that, which is, I think, is really neat. The Mars Ghost, thank you for the lurk. Yeah, and Grimly, fireflies are beetles, which so Grimly, that it's also like, why on earth do they have to keep misnaming, like, not, you know, they name things in a weird way where you don't, there was no reason why you wouldn't suspect that they would be a firefly, right? It's a beetle, right? But then it turns out they are beetles. It just has a silly name. I'm excited not to see fireflies. Knowing all this info, I'm gonna try. Yeah, so that was Grimly. We were mentioning you can actually communicate with fireflies with your phone. So you know how you have the light on your phone. If you put a yellow film on it, you can actually flash that light at the rate at which a firefly does, and you can get the male to fly over and land on your phone. Gold Rush! Hello, Gold Rush. Can you even land a kickflip? Gold Rush, listen, I've tried doing a kickflip, and I can do it on a trampoline. Can I do it now as an adult? Probably not. I did injure both of my shoulders twice because of swimming, and they're just like, they've been multiple surgeries, so they're totally nerfed at this point. So probably at this stage, I shouldn't even try it. But I hope you're doing well, Gold Rush. Yes, Old Drum, you can simulate the light of a lightning bug. You can actually, we can go online and get the exact pulse rate of how, because there's some species that have a long, like, it is a Morse code like, as Quathra Raven says. Some have like quick pulses of light, other ones light on X amount of time, and then light off again, which is quite amazing. Speaking of amazing, also, folks, go follow Big Gamey. Streamer extraordinaire is the legendary Big Gamey. Extremely handsome, extremely kind. He is making a video game called Homeward Hound, A Dog's Life, or I'm a Dog.
SciAnts know you. You're the cutest. I know that you deserve it, Juno. You a star over here. I'll reverse the card like Uno.
You're breathtaking.
Know you, Master Lee. Know you, sir. And Bit, I fixed stuff.
But SciAnts in the house, so we just straight thuggin'. No bad vibes, but these ants are buggin'.
Look, it stays pulsing a little bit, Big Gamey, just like you suggested. And Bit, I finished the audio on this one.
I love you 3000.
Finished it. Dad, do we have yellow film stuff? I have science. Old Drum. Worst case scenario, you take the thin saran wrap, like from the kitchen, and you take a highlighter and color it with your highlighter, and then put it on. That'll do the same thing, and you don't have to go buy anything. So you can absolutely MacGyver it or MacGruber it depending on your mood. And by the way, y'all, the first time I heard the term MacGyver was my first year of graduate school. I was trying to grow up bacterial cultures for a DNA extraction. I had them in beakers, the bacteria, ready to go overnight in this 37-degree incubator, and it wouldn't fit any of the holders. So I was like, Lita, what do you do? What does one do? And she's like, you MacGyver it. And then she walked away, and I had no idea what that meant. And so I just asked someone else, and later, like a week later, I told her, I'm like, hey, you remember when you told me to MacGyver it? She's like, yeah. I'm like, I have no idea what that means. And then she explained it to me. MacGruber, Smikes, is a movie that's parodizing MacGyver. It's called MacGruber. It is... I think it's an SNL skit, Smikes, that they turn into a full movie. And it was marginally amusing. Oh, Smikes, listen, that rap word, I have no idea how you're supposed to say it. In the South, I always heard it as serene rap. But serene means peaceful. And so then I just assumed it's sarin. Every time I say that word, I'm like, I'm probably mispronouncing this word. No idea how to say it. Possibly. I don't know. You can tell me how to say it, Smikes. I might remember that then it's wrong how I'm saying it, but then I would not remember how to do it. Sarin? I don't know if that's at all different than what I just said. I'm sorry, Astronomy Show.
From an especially attractive male, she'll aim her lantern in his direction and give him a flashback.
That's what you'd be doing outside Old Drum, is you'd be doing the singular flash towards the male, and then he lands on your phone. It's really, really cool to be able to do. Northeast to talk all kinds of weird. As long as you don't say roof or ka, you're fine, Smikes. You're fine. Did I ever tell you, Smikes, that Lita actually got speech therapy when she was a kid? You do? I am so sorry, sir. Lita got speech therapy as a kid because they had a nanny from the inner city of Boston, and her father was like, my child will not speak like this, so they got a speech therapist to knock it out of her. But she can turn it back on. And that's when I run out of the room. Yeah. I think it's Soran Rap. Soran Rap. I have no idea, Old Drum. I'm just going to keep going with Sarin. At least, y'all knew what I was talking about. And even, Old Drum, maybe some of y'all got a chuckle. And you know what? In that case, it's worth it. In that case, it's worth it. I speech therapy as a child. So did my little brother, Nelf. Say, Saran? Saran. See, there's all these fancy people here. I'm going to keep going Sarin here, y'all, and then we can go ahead and pull out the Southern blend, and then we can have a good time with that, all right, chat? Let's continue talking about them there fireflies.
It's her come hither sign. So he flies closer, and he flashes again.
Cling film is much better bit gamey than Sarin Rap. Hello, Capeasy. Capeasy, do you agree? I agree. It's a silly word here. It's not Saarian. It is not Saarian. That is 100% true. Like, Andrew, I'm missing so much of these words. I'm missing so much of these words. Redeem where you can use your southern accent for 5 minutes. So, Smikes, we're already running low on the redemption slots. So I'd rather not have that. And also, there is nothing more... If anyone takes it as I'm making fun of Southerners, then there's nothing worse for science, because a lot of people think it's do that, and I don't want it to be misinterpreted that way. And because, like, this sense of scientific superiority, which is not at all the vibe that we're going for. But if you ask, sometimes I can put on that there Southern accent. I know, Smokes, I know you throw them tomatoes at me. Don't you dare, boy. See what you're doing right there. I need to switch out them there tomatoes and make it so there's not, like, a lag in that animation. I remember most of the stuff I did today, but no, don't do it. But also, Big Gamey, if people think you're making fun of babies, Big Gamey, the world at that point has totally gone off the rails, if that's what we're talking about. Remember that night when we tried to pronounce Sarin Rap? Is that tonight, Old Drum? My God. Just dropping in with a new extension. Where is it, Smikes? Actually, I might know what folder it's on. I'd have to also futz around with it, so we might wait to do it, but I might have it. All right, let's get back to the fireflies.
If she still likes him, they'll strike up a conversation. These creatures speak their love in the language of light. So what exactly do these females consider sexy? We decided to conduct some firefly opinion polls to find out.
Opinion polls by science. On stream today, we're discussing Nerdarino getting hair out of the drain. Sometimes the quality content just creates itself. I don't... Bit, that doesn't make any sense. Nerdarino doesn't have hair.
When we tested females using blinking LED lights,
it wasn't his hair. Oh, God. Oh, Bits gave me. Bit gave me. Oh, Bit gave me. Oh, Bit gave me. That is terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying. That has thrown me, Bit. I'm just not getting imagery of someone who Nerdarino doesn't know their hair that he's... I don't... Look, art.
You can't rush art.
Look, a turkey. Excuse me, sir. Yeah. Old drum. You're not wrong. Thank you, Astronomy. Astronomy starts bringing us back with a derail. Look, cute animation. Old drum, the closest way that they could be asking something like that is they could be doing that experiment with the phone that we were talking about and pulse back and forth with, you know, females and males and just see what they come towards. Which is it's a very 101 style experiment, but why not do something like that, right? It's low budget, but it'll give you information about the lifestyle of the animal, and you get to learn more about the natural history of it too.
we discovered they prefer males who give longer lasting flashes. I know you're wondering what gives these males their sex appeal. Now we get to see what happens when the lights go out. The first thing we discovered is that once a male and female hook up like this, they stay together all night long. And when we looked inside to see what might be happening, we discovered a surprising new twist, the firefly sex. While they're mating, the male is busy giving the female not just his sperm, but also a nutrient-filled package called a nuptial gift. We can...
Melissa, there's no sneaking. I see you, Melissa, with all the numbers. Chat, if you're not checking out Melissa with all the numbers, they are a legendary gamer extraordinaire, and they are amazing at Rubik's Cube. Please go follow Melissa with all the numbers. A breathtaking soul who I might be meeting sometime with the family. Possibly, maybe, potentially. Because they are coming to they have a relative coming to a nearby college. I think it's kind of cool. My mini 3x3? The cube? I don't think so, Melissa. I do not think so. Melissa, with the easiest way to solve those Rubik's Cubes, you take off all the stickers and you put them on correctly. Also, Melissa, did you know that a Hungarian invented the Rubik's Cube? That's the only fun Rubik's Cube fact that I know. It was a Hungarian gentleman that we claim for that. Yeah, Lady Lara Croft. You mean with the mating? Or you mean with the Rubik's Cube? That's the next question. The stickerless. So, Melissa, what does that mean? Does it mean it's just like etched on or painted on? Melissa, what does that mean? Melissa's telling me all these fancy things now, chat, that I don't fully understand. Oh, the feeding while mating. Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, Lady Lara Croft. Sometimes the delay of the stream and then my brain as well. I'm like, wait a minute, what was the cool part? Sleep well, Astronomy Show. Astronomy Show, will you be back?
I'll be back.
I'm so sorry, Astronomy Show. I cannot help it. I very much dig that new animation. It's overly silly, but it still makes me smile.
I'm back.
Welcome back! I know, Astronomy Show, I don't have one for that yet, but we'll figure one out. Yes, Lady Lara Croft, we do have an animation for that now, yeah. I had a chuckle making that one. That was for Bit Gaming, by the way. Stickerless cubes are just different colored. Oh, cool. So, Melissa, there's no way to cheat on that one. Very nice, Melissa. Well, actually, you don't need to. Chat, Melissa's also crushing their bio class, like destroying it. As you would. No, Melissa, you never do that, Melissa. Right, Melissa? Right, Melissa. Melissa's like absolutely not. There'd never be any cheater, pumpkin eater, any of that. If you take it right, but if you're taking it apart, then you're just being totally naughty on that front.
And zoom in to look more closely inside this mating pair, we can actually see the gift. It's shown here in red as it's being passed from the male to the.
What's neat about this is actually you can see the ovaries here and here. And we don't have a good enough magnification of these ovaries, but you can see you would be able to see that on the edges here at the tips of the ovaries are the stem cells. Those stem cells are dividing asymmetrically, meaning that as it's dividing, one cell stays a stem cell, the next cell becomes the egg. And so it keeps dividing. The stem cells never run out because they self-renew, and that's you can have unlimited eggs produced. Now, again, their lifespan is short, so they're not going to have unlimited eggs. There's going to be a rough average that they're going to be able to get out. Same thing with fruit flies. Fruit flies have a very similar system. They keep laying, but as they age, the ovaries start to deteriorate. So even if you're keeping them alive to 80 days old, they're not going to be able to survive or reproduce a fair bit more than that. But it's still kind of cool to see. It's not an end-all rule for insects. Not all insects have the stem cells. Not all insects reproduce this way. There are some insects, like parasitic wasps, that have a finite number of eggs, and their lifespan spikes is even weirder. Their lifespan is dependent on how many eggs they have left. If you give them a bunch of larvae to infect as a young wasp, they'll infect them, and if they run out of eggs, they die. If you keep them from infecting, they'll live months. And they don't eat, they only drink sugar water. But their sole purpose is to distribute those eggs, and as soon as they're done distributing, they die. Pretty cool, I think.
Female. What makes this gift so valuable is that it's packed with protein that the female will use to provision her eggs. So females are keeping their eyes on this prize as they size up potential mates. We discovered that females use male flash signals to try to predict which males have the biggest gifts to offer, because this bling helps the female lay more eggs and ultimately launch more of her own offspring into the next generation. So it's not all sweetness and light. Firefly romance is risky. For the most part, these adult fireflies don't get eaten because, like their juveniles, they can manufacture toxins that are repellent to birds and other insectivores.
Interestingly enough, too, that gift from the male includes olfactory or smell components that tell other males to stay away. And the reason for that is because you don't want multiple males inseminating the female. Not because the female cares. It's just that if there's multiple males mating, the likelihood that a particular male's sperm is used to fertilize the offspring gets decreased every time you have additional males in there. And that means that those males will be far less successful in terms of genetic relatedness, or a genetic success, as it were.
But somewhere along the line, one particular group of fireflies somehow lost the metabolic machinery needed to make their own protective toxins. This evolutionary flaw, which was discovered by my colleague Tom Eisner, has driven these fireflies to take their bright lights out into the night with treacherous intent. Dubbed Femme Fatale by Jim Lloyd, another colleague, these females have figured out how to target the males of other firefly species. So the hunt begins with the predator. She's shown here in the lower left, where she's sitting quietly and eavesdropping on the courtship conversation of her intended prey. And here's how it might go. First, the prey male flashes. Do you love me? His own...
Which I like, by the way, how she's narrating to it as well. In science, do you have to work at the same place, or is it anyone who studies the same thing as a colleague? SciAnts News of the week, and we're chatting about, we discussed a new species of gecko that was discovered. We're also talking about a new study on fireflies, in particular the Femme Fatale, which are fireflies that do not have toxin, that acquire their toxins by eating males of a different species of firefly. And it turns out they have resistance to the toxin because of a gene duplication that has some mutations in it. And their authors actually put this gene into fruit flies and demonstrate that fruit flies, which normally don't have any of these genes, can get resistance to the toxins by just that one additional gene. So they showed what gene is sufficient to transmit chemical resistance to this toxin. They did not show it was sufficient in the fireflies. They did not remove the gene in the adult firefly and tested that out, simply because the genetic engineering is not yet far enough along in fireflies to be able to do sufficient testing in them. But I'll rewind the video just a little bit to bring back on the Femme Fatales, because I know Dame Karen's like, sick, righteous. I wanted to show Dame Karen this. Again, Raiders, welcome on in, Neuralicia Madame. Thank you again for the raid.
With the predator, she's shown here in the lower left, where she's sitting quietly and eavesdropping on the courtship conversation of her intended prey. And here's how it might go. First, the prey male flashes. Do you love me? His own female responds, maybe. So then he flashes again. But this time, the predator sneaks in a reply that cleverly mimics exactly what the other female just said. She's not looking for love. She's looking for toxins. If she's good, she can lure this male close enough to reach out and grab him. And he's not just a light snack. Over the next hour, she slowly exsanguinates this male, leaving behind just some gory remains. Unable to make their own toxins, these females resort to drinking the blood of other fireflies to get these protective chemicals.
Belind,
So,
Lita, use your words.
Yes. Sounds like my ex-wife. Oh! That's the air horn right there. My assumption, Smikes, was the big E word. That word means that they were just drinking the blood or the hemolymph of the animal rather than just eating the entire core of it. Yeah. But what are you eating, Grimly? It's just removing the insect hemolymph or the insect blood. They're not looking necessarily to eat the tissues. They're drinking the blood first, and then they might have some of the tissues, but they still leave behind, for example, the cuticle layer of the beetle. It's too hard to eat anyway, and just some other random components they might leave behind. The big thing for them is acquiring that hemolymph for that blood. Thank you for the fancy word spelling, Dame Karen.
a firefly vampire. Brought to you by natural selection.
Beef stroganoff? Grimly, you are so fancy, sir. Grimly, I cannot remember the last time I had beef stroganoff. Is it good, sir? I bet it's good. Grimly, I imagine that... See, Chad, this is probably not at all what's going on. I would like to imagine when Grimly's having a nice dinner, he's in a velvet bathrobe, okay? And he's got, like, this really nice table next to him where he can keep his reading glasses. He's got a nice light shining on him, and he's got a little footrest up, and he's just sitting back in this velvet bathrobe with this beautiful leather chair that has some nice blankets on it that are nice and soft, with a little back pillow too, and he's just like sitting back and having a good one. A smoking jacket that is even better, Smike. Very, very proper and prim. Reading glasses, yes, and a footrest, no velvet robe though. Okay, at some point, Grimly, we gotta go for it. At some point, we gotta go for it. Okay. Oh, sanguine, and yes, Dame Karen, sanguine in Latin means blood as well. The only one in the house that likes mushrooms, so we don't have it. Bit. It's totally a rabbit hole. I used to hate mushrooms. And hi, call me Kixie! Welcome in, Kixie! I used to hate mushrooms with a passion. Bit. Because I think that when they were cooked, they were overcooked, and it just became like this squishy, slimy consistency. One day, my dad made eggs and mushrooms. To the behest of my sister and I, he made that for lunch because my mom was working. And both of us were like, Dad, we hate mushrooms. And he's like, well, this is what you're getting. He could have bit gamey very easily have just made the eggs in a different dish and made his eggs and mushrooms in a different first dish. And therefore, one group of the people got it with mushroom and the other didn't. No. He just made one big portion of it with eggs and mushroom. And Bit, that was actually quite tasty. And since then, I've come up with some recipes where it's really good. You also hate eggs. Bit, you and Lita should have a chat about that, because she also doesn't like eggs. Neuralicia, if you take mushrooms, like a nice portobello, stay with me, Neuralicia. Put it into a Ziploc bag. Pour barbecue sauce in there and spices and shake it up. And then leave it overnight in the fridge. And then throw it on the grill. It is incredible. It is absolutely incredible. But you have to do these things right, too. 36 eggs in my house. I leave for Europe in 5 days. Oh, that's easy, Neuralicia. You just keep eating eggs. That's you're all good. Make like the biggest omelet ever tomorrow, and put like everything that you love in it. And then the stuff you don't want leftovers, use it on Monday's Vulgar Science and throw it at your friend. Oh, even better, Neuralicia, put a redemption in to egg your friend. It's extremely obvious. You know, just like egg your friend. It's like, well, 2,000 channel points, you crack an egg on her head. Or no, for every 5 gift subs, you throw an egg at her. It could be a subathon. Neuralicia, there you go. Ooh, a good quiche. That's true. Grimly's right. Quiche eats a lot of eggs. Yeah, and tons of cheese in there too. And then, of course, if you like meat, throwing in some of that as well. Oof. Oh, fireflies.
We still have a lot to learn about fireflies.
I was gonna make turkey sausage omelet, but then I saw a recipe for cream cheese. Oh, Quap, that sounds delicious. Irish John would do it for the crack. He would do it for the crack, but not the cronk, as Clayman says. What's with the eggs? Neuralicia, listen. I have a ton of ideas. Are they any good? Probably not. But I do have a lot of them. So I have the mods, like, you know, rake me in, reel me in, even. To make sure I don't go like totally off the deep end there. Sauteed wild mushrooms and ooh, Nelf. Yes. Some and a good sauce on there too, and even like some shredded cheese, even Parmesan.
But it looks like many stories will remain untold, because around the world, firefly populations are blinking out. The main culprit? Habitat loss. Pretty much everywhere, the fields and forests, the mangroves and meadows that fireflies need to survive are giving way to development and to sprawl. Here's another problem. We've conquered darkness. But in the process, we spill so much extra light out into the night that it disrupts the lives of other creatures. And fireflies are especially sensitive to light pollution because it obscures the signals that they use to find their mates.
And as we talked about, you can obscure that signal too with just your phone light sitting outside. If they can get thrown off by your phone, imagine what a street light does to them as well. So try to be careful around your fireflies. Quiche is super easy to make. Kixie. This might be disappointing, but I had a colleague who would spend most of the day making his quiche. And it seemed like the most labor-intensive process that I've ever seen. Because we were gonna watch a soccer game together, and he starts making this quiche, and he's in the kitchen throughout the entire game making this thing. Even the second game of the day, he's still in there doing stuff. It was delicious. But none of that seemed easy to me. None of that seemed. Chicken eggs on the dark web. Dame Karen, because we are trying to reverse engineer a chicken to be like a dinosaur, I imagine that those would go for quite a pretty penny. I imagine. Did I make the own crust? You make it. Kixie, I don't even remember if he made his own crust. Lita has made her own crust, and that turned out really nicely. She will probably argue whether or not it's a quick and easy thing to do. But, I've told her before just to use like a regular pie crust. She's like, no, it has to be delicious. It's fine. It's probably delicious anyway.
Do we really need fireflies? After all, they're just one tiny bit of Earth's biodiversity. Yet, every time a species is lost...
Grimly, crustless quiche can also be delicious, but... Grimly, my good sir. Grimly. I have had crustless quiche from certain people. It destroyed my stomach every time. And I had to eat it with, I took a bite, Grimly, and a swig of water. That's how I finished off that quiche. Well, so Dame Karen, Lita knows that she needs to eat eggs for the protein, so she still eats them, but she's really not a fan of them. So, she'll have a hard-boiled egg only if she hasn't had any protein in her diet, because, right, she's a vegetarian. But, yeah, when she made the quiche, I'm pretty sure I probably ate most of it, because it was delicious. Yeah. Get some good cheese and bacon and milk, and then just dump it all in there with the eggs. I have to be careful with the milk, Kixie, because my stomach can't handle it. We're trying to be careful with the carbs, which is most of the time. Grimly, you're right. I also should be more careful with my carbs. And I try. I just really hate being careful with them. Because I love carbs. I love bread. Grimly, it's a thing. It's a whole thing, Grimly. Grimly, Andrew and NMD had... they didn't want buns with their hamburgers when they were here for the barbecue. And it's just like, you know what? Hats off to y'all. Hats off to y'all. But I'm like, I like to have it with the buns. What does she get at the barbecue? There's fake burgers. There's fake hot dogs. Corn. Bok choy. Asparagus. Peppers. Carrots. All that jazz. Same pasta. Oh, God. A good pasta early. And a French bread. It's not if you use fork knife, Bit Gaming, but yeah, if you use your hands, it could be like, can you imagine Bit Gaming, all those juices all over your hands? And then if you're a savage Bit Gaming and you dry your hands with a paper towel afterwards, and don't just lick your hands, like what are you even doing that Bit Game, right? Right. Ben and Jerry. Oh. Also, Grimly, I almost misread that as journeys, like Irish journ. And a cannoli, wait, a cannelloni kick. I thought I misread that as cannoli there. I misread that as cannoli. I also love cannolis as well. Homemade spatzel. Now, if there's a similar thing to spatzel in Hungary that also is delicious to make it. NMD and Andrew, neither one of them use the bun. Smikes. Also, Neuralicia, we had a cannoli pizza last weekend at the Mod Barbecue. A cannoli pizza, ma'am. And you might be like, Belinda, that sounds insane. It is. It's delicious, though. It's a different kind of crust. It's like a softer, moist, a little bit sweeter crust with the cannoli filling on top. And some like, oh, it's delicious. It's absolutely delicious. Taters, you're right, Kixie. Kixie, listen. In the house when I was growing up, my dad and mom would eat a lot of the dried out potato that like you'd rehydrate, and my grandma to this day still complains about it. She's like, I was on the phone with her the other day, and she's like, your father keeps making this nasty potato. I'm like, I'm sorry, Grandma, just make your regular potato. She's like, no, because then they complain about it. It is Nookadli in Hungary a bit gaming. Taters give me all the time, as long as they're not tots, Quaff. As long as they're not tots. You don't want the tots. You don't want the tots. Absolutely not. But speaking of, we just mentioned the lovely Journey. Please go follow also the one, the only legendary, breathtaking Irish John Games, creator of the game Rise of Piracy. Let's go follow Journey Werney, who had a very important meeting today, which we all hope went really well. We don't have an update for you, but hope it went well.
It's like extinguishing a room.
LA boyfriend. Oh, I'm sorry, Quaff. Made wicked homemade poutine. Wait, so does that mean the fries and the toppings? Pringles? No.
You don't understand. You don't understand. If you understood, you wouldn't understand.
Pringles, Kixie. Can you tell me, Kixie, how is it that when you get started on a can of Pringles, you just honestly can't stop? You will destroy that container in 10 minutes. And it's not like a Lay's bag where half the bag is air. Like the whole entirety of the Pringles container is full of chips. It's just that dusting of flavor is so good. This bit game, he says, once you pop, you just can't stop. It's delicious.
Room full of candles, one by one. You might not notice when the first few flames flicker out. But in the end, you're left sitting in darkness. As we work together to craft a planetary future, I hope we can find a way to keep these bright lights shining. Thank you.
So that was a little bit of, I think, a nice global review on the Firefly biology as well as the Femme Fatales. And again, that connects back to the original paper where they identified the genetic duplication that was in the Femme Fatale as well as in the toxin producing animals. So that both the toxin producing animals have the resistance gene, which makes sense because it's in their blood, right? If you were not resistant to the toxin in your blood, you would die. So they have the resistance gene, so do the Femme Fatales. They took that resistance gene that they thought they had identified and put it into a fruit fly that is never going to normally experience this toxin, right? Because a fruit fly is not going to be eating a firefly. So normally, if you put a fruit fly on this toxin, it dies. And then they put the gene into the fruit fly, and they find the fruit fly is now able to survive the presence of the toxin with that additional gene. What they did, this again, as a geneticist, this phrase comes up all the time. Necessary and sufficient. That is the code of a geneticist. And that was beaten into me so hard that I will never lose that phrase. Necessary means if you remove the gene from the animal, does the feature you're studying go away? Does that mean that the gene is necessary for that feature? Sufficient means if you put that gene into an animal that didn't already have it, it is sufficient to give it this new phenotype or observation whatever. So what they've done here is demonstrated sufficiency. They put the gene in to a fruit fly, and they made it so the animal is now able to be resistant to the toxins. They have not tested necessity because they have not genetically manipulated the firefly. Does that make sense, chat? Here's the thing, people don't care about anything wrong with climate change, so I don't think they'll care about the fireflies. Quoth, that is very rage-inducing, and it's quite unfortunate, right? It's quite unfortunate, but sometimes people can be surprising because if there's a attractive animal, for example, something cute, sometimes people are more likely to get behind it and help it. So maybe if you pull on their heartstrings and be like, look, you like your night evenings with the fireflies, they're about to be gone, maybe that's enough of a motivator. But saving the world might not be enough. Neuralicia, thank you for the lurk. Go get the pup time and go get the food time. Thank you again, Neuralicia, for the raid. Love you, Neuralicia. Koalas in the bushfires. Yeah, like the koalas, polar bears. I don't know, Smikes, if that's sufficient to motivate people. There are some examples though, like I think Dame Karen's right with the koalas. There's also some Smikes with there was this really it was called like the ugliest fish, and that they thought was getting endangered, and people started like saving for the ugliest, like helping the ugliest fish. So there's these like very unpredictable when it comes to that. They lose the fire. I mean, Quoth, you're not wrong. And then of course the West Coast has unfortunately the dark fireflies that don't bioluminesce. So I don't know how much that's really a threat, but you know, because you lose the fireflies that you don't get to see stuff from. Well, chat, that was topic number 2. Let's go to topic number 3 now. Topic number 3. Koalas, incredibly super hours a day, constantly drunk. Yeah, Dame Karen, there are dark fireflies. So Dame Karen, there are whole species of firefly that the reason they're called fireflies is because they all have bioluminescence in the larval stage, so they still flash their colors as larvae. However, as adults, they do not. As adults, it's totally dark. They do not have that communication at all. There's no bioluminescence. We don't know then if they communicate more with olfactory cues. That would be the prediction, but that hasn't yet been fully fleshed out yet. So they're still getting on that front, but it's very cool biology to have that light phase, not like an emotional light, more that when they undergo metamorphosis, the whole internal anatomy gets reorganized, and then there's just not that bioluminescent featurette yet. If that makes sense. They don't remake that when they undergo metamorphosis, and we don't know why. Like why there is a selection pressure for them to not have that, which is kind of interesting, right? All right, next paper. The title, it is on ants. Absence of visual cues motivates desert ants to build their own landmarks. This is a near straightforward title. I think as straightforward of a title as we've had in some time, which is why I'm like, huh, all right, that's a pretty decent title. Chop Chop Streamer. No, hold on, Smikes. Gwendolyn P calls me streamer. You, sir. Actually, you can call me whatever you want. Just don't call me Shirley. We're moving along, Smikes. We're moving along. Don't worry. Before we get into the basic biology of what's happening here and what's going on with these ant species, we're just gonna jump back a little bit. No, call me maybe. But hey, I just met you, Smikes. Not really. We've known each other for a year now. It feels like we've known each other very recently, but also feels like we've known each other for a very long time. It's a whole weird thing, Smikes. It's like, it's a sign of the best of friends, as our redemption says.
My best friend.
Right? Right, definitely. Yes, so actually, Dan Karen, you're nailing the head, hitting the head right on the nail with what they're actually doing. It's they're making little landmarks to find their way home. It's a very cool study. We're going to first just dissect a little bit about how the ant colony works in general, and then we'll move on to specific ant species as well. Like ant pyramids. Yeah, not like full pyramids, Quoth, like ant-sized pyramids. Of different sizes, actually, and it turns out the different sizes might also be indicative of landmarks. So the idea is that when these ants are leaving this particular species, that's not the one in this video, I have another video of that desert species, that species can go up to 11 kilometers away from its home to get food. And then how does it get back? The apparently desert ants are far more visually motivated than they are olfactory, so they are really big optic lobes, they have big eyes, and they need to be able to navigate their way back home. What is this? A pyramid for ants? At least 3 times big. Yes, Racco, it should be. It should be. And one day will be. Hopefully they can build it. Actually, the researchers, Racco, did destroy some of their pyramids in the making of this study.
Think about all the things that need to happen for a human.
And the reason we're just diving a little bit into, actually, and Quoth, there is an Only Ants website. Quoth, have you seen the Only Ants website? Quoth, I find it very frustrating that I did not grab this link. Quoth, I am very disappointed in myself. Quoth, this is the Only Ants webpage. It says no termites in the top corner. And, yeah, it's just a bunch of celebrities with ant names. Quoth, I have no idea. There's nowhere to navigate on this website. It is just pictures of celebrities with their names slightly changed into their being ant, and they have little antennae and mandibles drawn in. Makes absolutely no sense. Like Lindsay Lohan. Come on. Like Dojo Ant Cat. Demi Love Anto. Like it's like Antna Kendrick. Oprah Winfrey. I know there's not actually, but Dame Karen does say no termites up at the top. Anne Hathaway kind of works. Emily Blunt. Natalie Portman. Some of them are stretch. But I mean, look, it's funny. But then it's saying, I'm like, why didn't I just grab this website link? Although, this website, far before I started studying ants, already existed, so. But yeah, Only Ants is a thing. Quoth, it is a thing. The ant. Kai! Hi, Kai, how you doing? Yeah, they might be. So the reason I just re-pulling this video is just that there's a lot of specialization for the members of the ant colony, and in particular, this ant species. Its specialization is going to be when it's sought out food, it has to be specialized on visual cues. It also has to be specialized on examining the nearby area, memory, and then the foraging behavior as well. So it has to be very, very specialized for the colony to work. And so that's why we're just doing a little bit of a review with an ant colony and its complexities in this video.
Human settlement to thrive, obtaining food, building shelter, raising children, and more. There needs to be a way to divide resources, organize major efforts, and distribute labor efficiently. Now imagine having to do this without any sort of planning or higher-level communication. Welcome to the ant colony. Ants have some of the most complex social organization in the animal kingdom, living in structured colonies containing different types of members who perform specific roles. But although this may sound similar to some human societies, This organization doesn't arise from any higher-level decisions, but is part of a biologically programmed cycle. In many species, all the winged males and winged virgin queens from all the nearby colonies in the population each leave from their different nests and meet at a central place to mate, using pheromones to guide each other to a breeding ground. After mating, the males die off, while females try to establish a new colony. The few that are successful settle down in a suitable spot, lose their wings, and begin laying eggs, selectively fertilizing some using stored sperm they've saved up from mating. Fertilized eggs grow into female workers, who care for the queen and her eggs, build and defend the colony, and forage for food, while unfertilized eggs grow into males, whose only job is to wait until they are ready to leave the nest and reproduce, beginning the cycle again. So how do worker ants decide what to do and when? Well,
and Dame Karen, like, the question now that they're asking is like, when do worker ants decide what to do and when? That same question could be asked about the queen, right? The fact that when she lays eggs to start out the colony, half are fertilized and half aren't. The unfertilized she eats, the other half are for workers, and those are different workers than your standard workers. Those are minims, which are smaller and have a faster developmental time, and it's just something to jumpstart the colony, versus the full minor and major casts that they're actually going to have when the colony starts to mature. There's absurd levels of complexity of even starting a colony and even maintaining it, all the things.
Well, they don't really. Although they have no methods of intentional communication, individual ants do interact with one another through touch, sound, and chemical signals. These stimuli accomplish many things, from serving as an alarm to other ants if one is killed, to signaling when a queen is nearing the end of her reproductive life. But one of the most impressive collective capabilities of an ant colony is to thoroughly and efficiently explore large areas without any predetermined plan.
And that's something that they need to, that it will be important for this study that we're talking about, is because they're going out doing exploratory behavior to identify and bring food sources back to the colony. And so that's, you know, like Dame Karen mentioned, it's using pyramids as visual cues, but where to go and how far to go and in what direction to go so you're not overlapping with other workers, there's a high level of complexity there as well. What about smell, Nelf? There's a lot of smell components within the colony, but being able to tell differences like when to lay and how much to lay, that's not just smell dependent, that's probably epigenetically regulated. And so certain genes are turned on and off in a time-controlled manner, but how the system knows when to turn them on and off, it's through signaling molecules, but what environmental triggers are triggering it is very difficult to know.
Most species of ants have little or no sense of sight and can only smell things in their vicinity. Combined with their lack of high-level coordination, this would seem to make them terrible explorers. But there is an amazingly simple way that ants maximize their searching efficiency, by changing their movement patterns based on individual interactions. When two ants meet, they sense each other by touching antennae. If there are many ants in a small area, this will happen more often, causing them to respond by moving in more convoluted, random paths in order to search more thoroughly.
So they're essentially mapping out where they're searching, but also where their coworkers are searching. And then that way they can maximize where they're planning on going, which I think is amazing. Choosing it, yeah, and Dame Karen, because one hypothesis too is, and this hasn't been proven, is if all the eggs are actually the same. There is some evidence to suggest, Dame Karen, that across different environmental stresses, there might be differences in egg population, like within the ovary. And again, they don't have a set number of eggs. They keep dividing asymmetrically and producing for 30 years. So it's not a set number of eggs. But as she's laying, there could be fundamental differences of the eggs that are being eaten versus the ones that are being fertilized and laid. That hasn't been conclusively proven, but it's been shown to be true in other insects. And that might be a possibility of what's going on. So, like, for example, Dame Karen, if you expose fruit flies to a parasitic threat, the eggs that they lay are more resilient against that parasite than eggs they would have laid if they hadn't seen the parasite, or eggs, like if you take away the parasite and leave the flies for 10 days, then the new batch of eggs that are produced no longer have that feature. So there could be these environmental influences that are affecting the offspring. So like food scarcity as well. Who knows what other signaling molecules could be acting on the ovaries. The reason we also don't know much about those, Dame Karen, on a genetic level is you can't, most of the time, almost all ant species you can't breed in a lab. Almost all ant species they need a very special mating flight, and you have to do it in the wild. And so all these experiments we're talking about, you needed a huge number of queens. And, you know, you could only do it seasonally then. It's a whole thing, Dame Karen. Hi, Zen! What does Hadouken mean? Hi, Zintaus. Zen, how you doing? How you doing, Zen? Zen, chat, if you don't know, Zintaus once saved the world from an asteroid. So if you're here breathing today on this world, from Street Fighter. Zen, are you playing Street Fighter? Please go follow Zintaus.
He's amazing. He rides a white stallion. One time he saved the world from an asteroid.
So it's not the captivity, Dame Karen, of why they don't breed. It's they need a bunch of factors. They breed, and mate seasonally, so certain times of the year. They need a certain amount of humidity in the air. They also need a certain temperature. They also fly, so they need air pressure from altitude and temperature change going in a gradient to be able to do the mating flight. So you just have a bunch of external signals that hasn't been figured out of how to be done. So we just don't know. There's one guy, Dame Karen, whose primary job is selling leafcutter ants, and he's trying to build an apparatus with other scientists. Andrew, thank you for the 100 pennies. Andrew CZ, amazing soul. Love you, Andrew. He's trying to build a machine that'll replicate the mating flight in terms of air pressure, temperature, and humidity. It's this giant tube. And it's quite remarkable that something like that is being built. But it's not that they won't mate in captivity, it's that there's all these external signals that we know are important. It's just difficult to reproduce if they're not outside doing it on their own. It's a good catch there. I'm playing, but I'm really bad at fighting games still. Zen, I suck at Mortal Kombat, but it is so much fun, Zen, that I can't not play. Although, Zen, there was a Mortal Kombat where it was a third-person fighter, and that was really fun as well. I don't remember which Mortal Kombat that was. It was on PS2, I think. But it was like you could do Mortal Kombat fighting in a third-person open world. It was very cool. It was very, very cool. Trying to build a time machine? I'm sorry, Smikes. Are you okay? We're on the third topic, Zen. We're on topic number 3. Zen's house. Zen, I also fixed some animations and sounds. Fixed the audio for this one.
I love you 3000.
Zen, I also fixed the timing of this one that that Big Gamey pointed out.
SciAnts in the house, so we just straight thuggin'. No bad vibes, but these ants are buggin'.
There we go. Didn't Iron Man fly away? Did I mess up the timing on that? I may have messed up the timing on that, Smikes. I'll have to check it. I may have clipped it too late or too early. And then Zen, I don't know if you saw this one.
I'll be back.
I probably clipped it wrong then, Smikes. And by clip, I mean I hid the OBS source too late. Too early. Sorry, I could have done that, probably. Alright, let's get back to the ants.
But in a larger area with less ants, where such meetings happen less often, they can walk in straight lines to cover.
Dame Karen, Andrew is a breathtaking soul who my daughter took to instantly. She cheesed at him the entire weekend. And in my mind, babies have this sense of who a good person is. And she would not stop smiling at Andrew. It was the entire week, and she would look at him and just the biggest smile. And that to me is like that, she has like that character judgment right there. If a little child like that, you know, with no real experiences in the world has that reaction to someone, you know they're a good person. And so Andrew is a darn good person. And I absolutely adore that man, and I thank him for everything he does for the colony, as do all the mods. But only because you were asking about Andrew, Dame Karen. Yes, he is an absolute legend. Buttspot, my God. And Debs, I know Debs probably can't hear me, but...
SciAnts know you. You're the cutest. I know that you deserve it, Juno. You a star over here. I'll reverse the card like Uno.
You're breathtaking.
No you, Debs. No you. All right, back to the aunts. Chats, the aunts.
Cover more ground. While exploring their environment in this way, an ant may come across any number of things, from threats or enemies to alternate nesting sites. And some species have another capability known as recruitment. When one of these ants happens to find food, it will return with it, marking its path with a chemical scent. Other ants will then follow this pheromone trail, renewing it each time they manage to find food and return.
It is not clear if this species that we're talking about tonight does olfactory recruitment. A lot of desert species are primarily visual, not olfactory. Just keeping that in mind. They might have different ways of recruiting, though. Just wait till our first word is Raiders! This new news story about these fireflies called Femme Fatale. And let me bring up the image of them. What they do is they are not toxic themselves, unlike most fireflies. So to get toxicity, they trick males of other species to come to them, and then they eat them to acquire their toxic traits. And then the authors worked out the genetics of this. And now we're talking about a paper about ants and how they use visual cues by landmark building to figure out where to go and how to get back to their homes. And so that's a little bit of what we've been chatting about tonight. If that sounds like it's up your alley in terms of science, we also do, we look at stuff under the microscope here. We do art and a bunch of other things. Consider hitting that home button.
So if you're not following science streams, then you have got to change that. You gotta go follow and you be rearranging your day around the dopest streams ever. There's music and there's art and there's science facts. What else do you need for your hearts?
Welcome on in, everyone. Debs, sleep well, Debs. Sleep well, Debs. So we're just now at the point where we're talking about what happens on a basic level inside of an ant colony. And we're talking about how they know how to seek out and explore different areas. And so the strategy for this in most species is olfactory or smell-based. Not necessarily true in this new species that is being described, because they are desert ants and they are primarily visual animals.
Once the food in that spot is depleted, the ants stop marking their return, the scent dissipates, and ants are no longer attracted to that path. These seemingly crude methods of search and retrieval are in fact so useful that they are applied in computer models to obtain optimal solutions from decentralized elements, working randomly and exchanging simple information. This has many theoretical and practical applications, from solving the famous traveling salesman problem to scheduling computing tasks and optimizing internet searches, to enabling groups of robots to search a minefield or a burning building collectively without any central control. But you can observe these fascinatingly simple yet effective processes directly through some simple experiments by allowing ants to enter empty spaces of various sizes and paying attention to their behavior.
The ants that we're going to be talking about in a little bit actually have been shown to use sun position and also step counting as their metric for getting back and knowing where to go in terms of like identifying different locations to explore. So it's not just olfaction based for them, again, because of it's in part because of the heat and the environment they live in. Just smell isn't really a suitable possibility for it. Fitbits for ants. So they actually change their gait behaviors, Mike. So what you can do is you can augment an ant's leg by adding toothpicks. Yes, it is as silly as it sounds, but that means that each step will be different lengths now than what they originally counted. And so if they counted X amount of steps in order to get somewhere, if you change that leg length, that number will be different. And that's actually what the researchers did, and it turns out that's how they identified that step count was in part very important for these animals, because now the numbers are very different. And so when they ended up at the correct step count, they overstepped the colony. If you extended the leg length, if you shortened the leg length, they ended up at the wrong location. And it's quite remarkable that you can figure it out with something like a very simple but elegant experiment, I think. It's really cool. Yep, no pedometers yet, Smikes, but eventually, maybe, possibly, we'll have some kind of, ant Fitbit, as it were. They also did the position of the sun for these animals. The way that they could tell is also pretty straightforward. For sun positioning, what they did, they actually just did the experiment in the dark or in full spectrum light, overhead light, and they find that didn't. The ants were not as efficient at finding their way home at that stage. And in particular, you could have told that was going to be the case, because if you look at the morphology or the basic structure of the ant, they have that third false eye called the ocelli. And if they have that, then they're most likely utilizing UV length, wavelength of light in order for directionality. So it was even informative based on looking at them, which we'll look at them in just a moment.
Ants may not be able to vote, hold meetings, or even make any plans, but we humans may still be able to learn something from the way that such simple creatures are able to function so effectively in such complex ways.
So now we'll get to the ants. We'll get to the ants in just one moment of what species we're talking about, but I wanted to quickly point out what the paper says that is the primary takeaways of their study. The ants face a high mortality rate during long foraging runs. We'll talk about that. It's because in part of the heat that they're undergoing. The nests in the flat salt pan have taller nests than nests in the structured areas, is one point that they proved. Ants use nest hills as a visual cue to navigate home. They add landmarks to the nest in the salt pan and suppresses hill building behavior. So the end goal or end point of the study is if they can go up to 11 kilometers away from the nest. In order to get back home, as they're leaving, they will build some sites, little mounds, as like little markers for where they're going. The nest site itself looks something like this on the left-hand side. So the left-hand side is a flat surface, and you can see how tall the nest site is. The nest is underground, but they build a very large marker so the ants know where to go. The second one beside it is a little bit more of a bumpy area, and they have smaller little things that they like, sites that they build throughout. So, and that's the hypothesis that it's through visual cues. But let's learn about this ant. Its genus is Cataglyphus. It is more colloquially known as the desert ant, aka the silver desert ant.
Can anything survive the North African desert when the sun is at its fiercest? It's approaching midday. A fringe-toed lizard is hungry. He's on a stakeout. Flashy scales reflect some of the sun's rays. Nevertheless, the heat is almost unbearable. His prey hasn't left home all day.
Pimcat, I see you. Dame Karen, it is not yet known that there is royal jelly in ants. We do suspect that there is some feeding that does influence the animals, but there is no molecule or concoction of molecules like royal jelly in bees that is also synonymous in ants, which is surprising. Again, we suspect there's some kind of food component that's fueling what caste these animals become. But as far as we're aware, there's no royal jelly for that. Go get him, Pimpcat. As long as they're kept safe, Pimpcat. As long as they're kept safe. Would have made the research a lot easier. So, Smikes, the only way to tell that... So what the hypothesis currently is, Dame Karen... So we know royal jelly is made in particular for queens in bee communities. What we don't know is what food sources ants use to make different castes, because bees have workers, drones, and queens. So it's just the three. Versus some ants, like the leafcutters, have 10 castes, right, in total. And so one hypothesis is that the nurses, when they're regurgitating food and feeding the larvae, they're also adding some epigenetic modifiers into the diet of the larva that could then be influencing what they end up becoming in terms of development. This has not been proven. This is just a hypothesis at this current stage. But it is something... I think it is a neat hypothesis to think about. Are ants always high in protein? So, Pimpcat... Depends. Not all ants are high in protein. Queens are. Queens are chopped full of protein. Their whole thing is they have to be full of protein for energy reserves, to make new members of the colony, laying eggs, all that jazz. Workers sometimes have a fair amount of protein and energy reserves, but that's a little bit more dependent on what age they are. Older ones tend to have less, but if you really want super protein rich animals, Pimpcat, the larvae of the ants, those are the most full of protein. The larvae, that's what most things will go for. That's what the aardvarks are going for as well. They're going for the larvae, the grubs, not the adults. Off the bat, have a good one, Neuralicia, madame. Thank you for banging with us. Thank you for being so cool, so hip, so fancy, and for the raid, and for you just streaming and promoting science on Twitch, Neuralicia. I appreciate the heck out of you, ma'am. Sleep well, and have a safe trip over there in Europe. We're gonna miss you, Neuralicia. We're gonna miss you, madame. We're gonna miss you. Yes, good luck with the eggs. There's a scary ant.
The lizard is the last animal still out on the dunes. But even he can't take it anymore. To survive longer, you'd need a spacesuit. And in a way, that's what these insects have. Silver ants' armored skin reflects light. They can tolerate temperatures that would kill any other land animal.
I'm not sure of the lizard, Pimpcat. Yes, we did talk about these ants a few months ago, Smikes, but this paper just came out. So I figured we should still talk about the basic biology of them, just to kind of bring us back onto what they are.
Even so, they can only survive for less than 10 minutes in the midday sun. Time is precious. The ants race to find food as soon as their predators go to ground.
They are cute. This also makes it seem like they don't, like they're on a very short timer. They are on a timer, but they do travel a fair distance from the colony. So they, again, 11 kilometers. They just, as they're moving along and hiding elsewhere, they will hide underneath stones and little of these crevices to make sure that they're not dried out and essentially melted by the sun.
They can't afford to waste a second getting lost, so they spin to take a bearing from the sun. They log every change of direction.
Depends, Mike, on what you call a normal ant. Carpenter ants will go, like fire ants is about 300, I believe. It's about 300. One of those ants can survive heat from those Japanese bees that swarm and oh, so not just those, Radko. I wonder, because bee colonies also will fight off infection, like nothing crazy like you're saying, like just your regular European honeybee vibrate and also heat up the colony, like their hive, in order to fight off infection. So I'm not sure. I think given the temperature, they probably will survive better, but not necessarily very long either.
Every footstep in order to know exactly where they are and where their nest lies.
And this is again that step counting comes into play when they figured out that these animals knew the step count of how to get back to their nest. Again, you kind of feels like it makes more sense because of the environment that they're in for it. Kind of heat, yep, for sure, Reiko, for sure. And it's like how much liquid they have in them before they're leaving.
Only 4 minutes to spare, and they found a victim of heat stroke. A meal. But it's going to take a monumental effort to get it home.
I don't know, Pimcat, if they've looked at a terminal temperature that would kill these ants. We do know that they can survive certain temperatures for a certain amount of time. But I don't know if someone's just like... And because of that time component, it's a little bit difficult, right? Because this temperature does kill them if they're in it for a certain amount of time. Versus... if they, if you raise the temperature higher, presumably it would just take less time to kill them. So that's like the difficulty in figuring that out. Yeah. Difference in the temperature that the hornets die at versus the bees is so small. Yeah, and the fact that they can figure that out and maintain the key temperature is quite incredible. Hello, slightly caffeinated. Would it be unethical to put the ants in the incubators? Very intense to see them die. Depends on why you're doing it slightly caffeinated, in my mind. So there's no governing body of ethics on insects. So in theory, you could do whatever you want.
Voila.
Hello, Fortuitous. Welcome in. In theory, you can do whatever you want. No, IACUC does not cover insects, Reiko. It's higher order mammals like mice, rats, rabbits. Does not cover insects, yeast, even zebrafish is like, not really covered. Yeah, I don't actually, zebrafish aren't covered either. So many of the model organisms are not covered. I only deal with human subjects. No, it's yeah, you'd have mice, rats, like those mammals, but not on insects. And so there are some frustrating things that you see. In one of my old labs, there was a guy who liked to fight ants. He'd put together two different species, and one of the things they do when you put together two different species is that they fight each other, and he'd have them fight and kill each other. And that was, yeah, that to me is a sign of a serial killer. It wasn't in the context of science. He just thought it was funny. You could never do that with mice, right? Because that's against a lot of the ethical regulations. So this is, again, just that desert ant. The reason they're out in the sunlight and during this really hot days, that's when they're hunting and foraging, and they're terrified of the heat in a certain sense. They can only be out for a certain amount of time before they need to go hide again. And so that's what we're chatting about. And how do they identify sites to go to?
3 minutes to go, and they're nearing their maximum temperature, an astounding 53 degrees Celsius.
Pimcat.
But there are already casualties. One minute.
So Pimcat, the way they navigate is using sunlight. And so there is not enough light from the moon for them to be able to have sufficient amount of navigation ability, and that's why they're using during the day. It's a great question, but yeah, it's just part of their search strategy.
Left, and they're not going to make it. Something has to change. The silver ant is the hardiest of all desert inhabitants. Even so, it can only survive outside in the middle of the day for a matter of minutes. This is the tale of two of the Africa team's most challenging desert expeditions.
Yeah, this is the Sahara Desert, Pimcat. We're actually going to finish the video. Well, actually, no. Would y'all like to see how they got the footage? It's kind of neat to see that. Let's finish out how they got the footage, and then we'll summarize kind of the findings of the study. The study findings are pretty straightforward in how they did it. It's published in Current Biology, which is a pretty good paper and pretty good journal as well.
One focused on a minuscule creature with an incredible turn of speed. The other...
I have, Uncle Al, seen clips of it. I haven't seen the full movie. We've talked about maybe doing it for a movie night on the Discord, which we might need to end up doing that.
On a subject so slow, to film it in action would take years. In both cases, the Sahara would push crews to the limit in pursuit of the perfect shot.
Buttspot, I think, did a good job on that, Uncle Al. No, it's great. No, it's ant. That is gold right there. Well done.
In Tunisia, the mission is to capture footage of moving sand dunes, something that's never been tried like this before.
The problem is that because the genes move so slowly, we're going to have to leave cameras here for about 20 months, and that just means there's a huge potential for things to go wrong.
And with filmmaking, if something can go wrong, it usually will. Two local shepherds, Amor and Nasser, have volunteered to tend the equipment full-time. The camera tower will be the tallest structure for as far as the eye can see.
So this actually will show you, Pimcat, how they find the ant.
And there are 3 other cameras at lower angles.
And how they
all this toil will yield surprisingly scant results.
So we've programmed the cameras to take 1 photo every day. That's only 365 photographs a year, which when you run it at normal speed, just over 14 seconds. I think it's taken longer to explain what's going to happen, and the end result will actually be.
The cameras are left to the mercy of the sun, wind and sand. In the meantime, crews are shooting all across North Africa. In Egypt, the challenge is to get into the world of the most heat-tolerant desert animal, the silver ant.
They're really small, they're really fast. Like, you're not too sure if you've seen an ant.
The crew have 3 weeks to gather the footage they need.
going to try a tracking shot on this ant nest, moving forward towards it as the ants pour out of the hole in their millions.
Not only are these insects super fast, they also keep antisocial hours.
The thing is, we need to be out here in the middle of the day to film these ants. They don't do what they do when it's nice and cool at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning.
I can't remember ever being in a place where the wind was so relentless and the temperatures were so high.
The insufferable heat is not the only problem. Dangers are everywhere.
Ooh! There's a really fat scorpion. It's really big.
1, 2, 3.
This might kill.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's big and have a lot of poison in his dark thing.
What, that thing there?
Oh my god!
Don't touch it!
The scorpion will be released far, far away from the camp in a shady spot. No such luck for the team. They're back to work in the midday sun.
Also, Dame Karen, I love how the CC thinks that your name should be bleeped out.
This is too much. This is crazy. This is crazy.
Indeed. The heat seems to have given Kat and Warwick a touch of Saharan madness.
The plan is to do an experiment. To find out how fast these little ants can run.
So we're going to lay this along the floor, and hopefully an ant will run alongside it, and we can film it at high speed.
And from that, calculate their speed and perhaps try and relate it to how fast that would be for a human like me.
Look, a human like me.
Silver ants are expert navigators, using the angle of the sun to calculate their position. But for our team, even basic mental tasks are becoming a challenge.
Count a second. When you see one running, don't count a second.
It's quite difficult to count a second, isn't it?
No, it's one.
That's what a robot is.
1. Yeah. There he goes.
He's gone 10 centimetres in 4 seconds.
Yeah.
But
Alfie Bean! Chad, if you're not checking out the lovely amazing Alfie Bean, please go follow Alfie Bean. Alfie Bean is an absolute legendary artist extraordinaire. Recently celebrated her birthday this past week. Alfie Bean, we love your face. Madame, you're amazing. Please follow Alfie Bean! Graphic artist, wizard, game jam dev, all around wholesome, kind, loving person. We love Elf here. Elf. Love you, Elf.
we're running at 500 frames a second, which is 20 times normal time.
Yeah.
So in fact, he's covered those 10 centimetres in... We know that he does half a metre in 1 second.
Half a metre per second, yeah.
50 centimetres in 1 second.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yeah.
So how many body lengths is that? He's maybe doing 5 body lengths a second if he's 2 metres tall like I am.
Are you?
Yeah, that's how much more than a normal man I am.
Eventually, the duo decide that if the silver ants were our size, they'd be doing 280 miles an hour. They're one of the fastest sprinters in the animal kingdom.
No wonder we've been struggling to film them.
It does explain a few things.
Athletics.
Knowing the exact speed of the ants is all well and good, but there's still a great deal of work to be done before the shoot finishes. However, in Tunisia, there's no shortage of time, and hopefully no news is good news as far as Amour and Nasser are concerned. The final week in Egypt, and the crew seem to be adapting to life in the oven. Practice is making perfect, and the sequence is coming together.
I think we've got some lovely shots. Every single shot's been really hard-earned.
But getting down in the ants' world is now taking its toll on the kit.
It's It's running to stand still, the business of blowing dust off these things.
So, Pimcat, they get food, and so, like, the food that they're getting, like the dying fruit flies, they're extracting the liquid from that. So they actually, Pimcat, it's weird, even leafcutter ants, if you give them water, they won't really be drinking water. They're getting their water source from their food, and then just a tight exoskeleton that doesn't evaporate it off, which I think is a really cool strategy for them to do.
Oh, no. It's got dust in it. Oh, crunch. I think these ants are stunning looking. Near impossible to film, I think, because of the speed they had. But, you know, I've come to love them over the days and weeks.
With the sequence in the bag, Warwick wants the final traditional sunset shot.
It's the best time of day to film sunsets, in the evening. That's experience that tells me that. I've been doing this for years. You learn these things.
Thanks to Warwick's experience, including sunsets, he and Kat have captured the extraordinary life of the speedy silver ant.
So, what did the paper finally find? So, studying these ants, they identified that they can move and get rid of these mounds, and the time it took the ants to get back was far longer. In fact, most of the ants didn't actually end up making it back to the nests. They actually did it on 2 different sites. There's some of these animals that are near a shoreline, and so that's one, the same species, one near a shoreline and one in the middle of the desert. They found that if they get rid of the mounds near the shoreline, the effect is not really big, and they hypothesized that because the ants are using the shoreline as a metric, like that's their visual cue, not just the little mounds that they're building. However, in the middle of the desert, when there's not a lot of visual cues and visual landmarks, if they get rid of these little mounds that the ants build, not just the colony mound, but little landmarkers, they don't end up finding their way back. What they also found is that the ants that then start leaving from the colony start rebuilding the mounds. And so they actively are using those mounds as visual landmarks as a means to get back to their nest sites. Now, authors didn't go through and didn't ask any questions about the neuroscience behind it. They didn't ask any other extra questions on that front. It was all this behavioral metric. They also looked at if they added landmarks, if that made it easier for the ants or not. And it seems like the physical human-made landmarks are also just as good as the ones that they build, just as like it just depends on what location they're actually putting them in. And what was really also neat was the differences in when they built these mounds. So if it was an exceptionally flat area, they found that these mounds that actually were the nest entrance sites were the biggest, and then they didn't have any little bit of a landmarkers anywhere down lower. However, when it was a more hilly environment, they had a bunch of more visible markers throughout the area where the ants foraged. And it's basic bio, but it's the beginnings of figuring out how these animals navigate. And it's, again, they have big eyes, so using visual cues is a must. I'd be very interested to see the neuroscience side of things on what their eyes are like and what they're able to see. We don't yet have that information. There presumably are not really any genetic tricks to be able to do that yet. But it's still a really, really cool thing to study and have learned. And so I thought, again, it was a neat and unique study. And so that's paper number 3, folks. So chat, with that, let's go over to the Just Chatting screen. And let's do a little bit of a summary of what we talked about tonight. Actually, we'll do it on the main screen. How about? We'll do it on the main screen so I can show off the papers. First one that we studied or talked about tonight was a brand new lizard or gecko species. We talked about how they identified the species. We talked a little bit about how these species in general fend off predators, which is through smell. So they toot their way to safety. They looked at both genetics and structural biology of these. Thank you, Uncle Al. Appreciate you. Paper number 2 was looking at the Femme Fatale. Big game, you get me. The Femme Fatale lightning bugs and how they acquired toxicity resistance, and again, it was utilizing, they have the gene, it's a genetic resistance through gene duplication. The researchers even put this gene into a fruit fly and gave it resistance when it otherwise did not have. And finally, the third paper we talked about tonight was these silver desert ant and their navigation ability and the fundamental biology that governs these animals as well. We also did a little bit of a rabbit hole into bioluminescence and just all around general firefly biology, which I thought was quite fun tonight. So